Live from San Francisco, it's Saturday morning, and we are here at the Pro Chess League Finals alongside me, as usual when it matters, Grandmaster Robert Hess. 4 teams made it through the 2018 Pro Chess League season out of 32. And on that note, it's time to get things going. No more preparation, no more waiting. We are going to throw things down to Women's FIDE Master Alexandra Botez, who is standing by with the teams in the playing hall.
Thanks, Danny and Robert. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to the Pro Chess League. Whether you guys are here in the live audience or watching from home, we're really happy you guys are here. Without further ado, are you guys ready to meet the teams? Yeah. Woo! Introducing the Ljubljana Turtles, a team of lifelong friends coming from one of the smallest capitals in Europe. These underdogs have fought through one of the toughest divisions in the league and are here as the central champions. Up next, the Armenian Eagles. They come from a country with a long history of rich chess culture. Although it's their first time in the Pro Chess League, they've been one of the most consistent teams so far. They won the qualifier as well as the Eastern Division. They've clearly earned their spot in the top 4. Moving on to the St. Louis Archbishops. They're coming from the chess capital of the United States. They don't really need an introduction. They are the reigning and defending champions. They're also one of the most experienced teams here. Representing the Atlantic Division, they're here in hopes of becoming 2-time PCL champions. And finally, the #1 seed, the Chengdu Pandas from China. They have fielded some of the strongest players in league history. They are the top performing team in the top 4. They have a global fan base and they cruise their way through the Pacific Division. The question on their mind, who are they going to be playing in the first round? Since they're the top performers, for the first time ever in chess history, they're going to pick who they're playing. But before they do we have any volunteers ready to take on the Chengdu Pandas? Anyone? Raise your hands if you want to play. Okay, in that case, Chengdu, you guys have around 3 minutes to pick who you're going to be playing in the first round. The first match is up to you guys. Back to you, Danny and Robert. Thanks, Danny and Robert. I'm here with the decision of the Chengdu Pandas. Are you guys ready? All right. The first round, the Chengdu Pandas are going to face off the Ljubljana Turtles.
On that note, tilt or calm and emotionless, we are going to get started right now. The staff has given me the go-ahead, which means I'm giving them the go-ahead, which means we're all in a big circle of happy go-aheads. And it's time for the Pro Chess League Finals to kick off. I have everything the body needs, which is Robert Hess next to me, some water right here, and a whole bunch of chess fans right behind me. Let's go ahead and get things started. And on that note, we have our first matchup underway between Luca Scuola and Wang Yue. The Pro Chess League Finals is happening.
Yeah, and everyone is clapping here because that's what you can do when they're noise-canceling headphones on. And we see that the game's underway with Wang Yue with the black pieces against Luca Scuola. And we're starting off with a pretty normal Sicilian defense, Danny. And,
yep.
With the white pieces, Scuola, he should play something, I would say, very principled and get himself a normal, slight opening advantage with the white pieces. I wouldn't probably venture into super tactical territory just yet because, as you see, he's outrated by nearly 600 rating points, right? That is
it's tremendous. A lot of rating points. I'm not going to lie. I was looking at this matchup as you said that, and I got butterflies. I got nerves, and now my job gets easier from here on out throughout the weekend. So you said he should play something solid. I think, obviously, you should play something you know well against strong grandmasters, but the Taimanov Sicilian has the potential to become very sharp. You have positions, everybody, where in a lot of Sicilians you have the queen side ready to expand, and you have all kinds of pieces coming to life quickly over here. So this isn't going to be an opening that's for the faint of heart.
Right, definitely not. And so with the black pieces here, Wang Yue will try to open the c-file, like you said, eventually apply pressure, especially if white decides to castle long.
Well, we're going to move on to the game that has also started here, Mate Sebenik versus Nihua. Here we have something that's a little bit different. as far as the opening is concerned, what we have here is a Queen's Gambit declined structure. My first thought when I see this is I think positional attacks for white on the queen side, a minority idea, and black trying to coordinate the pieces in some way to usually use the e-file, though this isn't the most orthodox type of QGD setup. What happened early on here with the dark square bishop trade that you can highlight for us?
Well, as you can see, the queen is on d6, which is a bit abnormal for a lot of these lines. Typically, the queen is somewhere on e7. If you just scroll back, let's say to move 5, and we can just go through the opening since you don't have too many games underway, you'll see that exactly white had put the bishop on g5.
Yep.
And then retreated backwards, like pretty normal development from both sides. And then after castle, c6 went bishop f4, saying please capture me on f4. And the reason why that was an option is look at the bishop on e6, it has no squares.
Right.
It can go over to g4, but then you allow a check on the e-file and have to move your king. So
Absolutely.
That would not be a good transition for black. So instead, he was forced to allow the exchange on the d6 square. So it was very interesting idea by Mate Shebenik, and now he's going to go for the pawn minority attack that you spoke about. We're going to go rook b1, b4, and then a4, and then b5, and just play on the queen side. So I really like what white has done thus far in the game.
Yeah, and that's an interesting transition you talked about there. Obviously, we know that Nihua brings the higher rating on paper, but Grandmaster Mate Shebenik is not his first rodeo either, right? And so whether this was preparation by Shebenik or whether this was an idea he came up with over the board, maybe time will tell. And on that note, one of the things that you'll always notice in the beginning of the Pro Chess League is who's taking more time, right? At this moment, we've got a small edge on the clock for the Panda here, Nihua, and whether that continues to remain the case is usually the first sign we have that somebody feels more in control. Not necessarily even that they're always winning right away, but somebody feels a little more confident. We see Nihua quickly playing the move a5, everybody, which holds back the b4 square, with the key point being, as we've highlighted, one of white's typical ideas in this structure is to advance in a way that feels really good to eventually open things up over here and create weaknesses as you open up more lines for your queen and rook battery sitting on the c-file. But a5 has some consequences too. In some cases, maybe now white pulls an audible and switches plans. Moves like knight a4 and knight c5 start coming to my mind. Rob,
well, also very importantly is that once you push this pawn away from a6, the b5 square is a little bit more vulnerable. So black, if you go back just before the move a5, that black had the option of playing c5, giving yourself an isolated pawn, but gaining more space in the position and another file for the rook on the c-file. But instead, by going a5, you're really not playing c5 anytime soon, because then knight can hop into b5 with tempo, and then problems in the c line. So instead, rook fe1 was played. And what I'm thinking from white's perspective as well is that knight on c3 may just go to e2 and over to f4 and g3. And another problem for black is by going h6, you can't really go g6 anymore to stop a knight from coming into f5. So even a move like knight h4, after rook at ec8, let's say knight h4, just an example, you can't play this move g6 because I will just take on g6 with the bishop, shattering your king side and taking up all your pawns over there as well. So it's definitely an interesting idea from white's perspective just to go in for the f5 square.
Yeah, it's a great point. And some of these things at first, before the tactics really get messy and we have fireworks, are us as commentators and as chess coaches by trade trying to provide a little bit of a background, or maybe it's like the footwork when you watch two heavyweight boxers going at it, right? Who's setting up who for a counter blow? And as you see with the move rook c8, maybe black does eventually go back for some sort of c5 idea and inviting knight b5, but playing the game of the open c-file, rook versus queen. So as you watch the games here, try to keep an eye on some of these early things we've highlighted in regards to how the players react to each other's plans. The next game has been started. We have the game between Shu Rotong and Michelangelo. That, of course, is Luka Lenic playing the black pieces right now for the Turtles. Early on, we have a Catalan type of structure here with an early queen b3. This could be a dynamic one very quickly when the queen comes out early, especially if black chooses to go for variations with a strike in the center like c5.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point of the Catalan is to get that bishop on g2 out in the open. So eventually, if there are some pawn trades, that bishop has to control the long diagonal. If you look at the bishop on c8, it's not a happy camper, right? It's stuck behind a wall of pawns. And this move knight b6 is very interesting, taking advantage of the fact that the queen's on b3. So if the move c5 were to be played, well, you can just retreat your knight, but also knight c4 has to be considered. And the point is that normally, if the queen was not on b3, you could just move this bishop away from d2.
And immediately be threatening to trap the knight with b3.
Absolutely. But then ideas, if you move your bishop, ideas like b6, just hitting the pawn chain and getting rid of the space that white has.
Right.
So Yeah.
So interesting. Knight b6, normally a Soviet chess schoolboy no-no, right? You don't put your pieces in front of your pawns on the side of the board where you expect there to be fighting moves, opportunities to gain space for your opponent. But in this case, it's the tactics that sort of override the positional no-no in the moves that Robert just highlighted there with the pony hopping into c4. So, wow. Okay, well, we have 3 games underway. Let's go back to the game that we first touched on. That was between the board 1 of the Pandas, Wang Yue, taking on Luca Scuola. Not many moves have been played here. This is going to be a sharp Sicilian, though. The castle's queenside by white definitely sets the tone that at some point, especially if black castle's here, we are going to see a race position, both sides trying to do some nasty things to the other. But maybe a3 invites the endgame. It says, you know what, if you're going to take on c3, I'll take with the queen, and despite my double pawns, the loss of the dark square bishop can sometimes be more critical in this structure as we see a whole bunch of dark holes there. What are your thoughts about the move a3 and the opening that young Luca has chosen? All right, we're going to see that.
Yeah, I actually really like these types of positions from the white side, and the reason why is I'm a big fan of the 2 bishops. And like you just highlighted, the dark squares for black are going to be hard to control when you don't have a bishop. However, what Wang Yue is probably relying on is the fact that he has a much better pawn structure. If you look at the queen side, there are double isolated pawns in the c file, the isolated pawn in a3, and if you're black, if you can get that bishop out and then put a rook on c8, you're already threatening the queen side. So if I'm white, honestly, I'm thinking about the move c4 as quickly as possible.
And because of that, we may see Wang Yue play a move like b5 and still run into c4. So the dynamics on the queen side here are critical, everybody, because just to play the imaginary chess game to show you the positional instructive things you can learn from this, if black just sat tight and didn't rush ideas like trying to stop grips on the dark squares, you would get positions like this where white has not only complete control of the dark squares but all the dysfunction that comes with that, in the sense that these pieces are all sort of trapped. So that's why the dynamic you want to pay attention to in this game is a fight over black rushing his development forward so that he can punish these positional weaknesses before white has a chance to use the dark squares against his opponent. Now, the next game has started, which gets me excited. Did you feel that between us?
I did.
That was excitement between us. I'm not sure if you can feel that. Yep, all 4 games are underway. Those of you not up here don't know exactly how excited I was for that, and that's okay. What we have right now is the final game. Here we have Yuri Borashek taking on Zhu Zhengyu here for the Pandas, and another Catalan.
Yeah, another Catalan where now look at the bishop on g2. It's staring at a wall of pawns on b7 and c6, but exactly as I was about to say, the move e4 was played. So white has expanded in the center, and the good thing is you've taken up more space to restrict your enemy's pieces. However, the problem can be if you're overextended. Look at this bishop on g7. Once that knight moves away from f6, the pawn on d4 is immediately under attack. The queen on b6 does a good job of tying some of the white pieces down to the queen side, in particular the bishop on c1 to the pawn on b2, and already it's a critical decision for the player with the white pieces, because if you play the move f3, you may suffer the consequences of that long diagonal, opening up your the king to the queen on b6. So, and moving the rook does not look good at all. Rook to d2 blocks in your bishop. Rook to d3, it's just really an awkward square where perhaps your queen may even get trapped there.
It's interesting how you paint a picture of that. I think that's instructive for a lot of our members, because one of the first principles you learn in chess, of course, is center control, and the fact that you want to control the most vital access points, the routing stations, right? As your pieces try to fight for more aggressive squares, the center is usually the road that everybody crosses through. But in this case, white, with this extended center, has to be really, really careful, right? You talked about this bishop on g4 is really irritating, hitting this rook. You don't want to go to d2 and block development, another very important principle that all beginners learn. But if you play f3, as you said, that is a queen on the long diagonal, and she is happy to see you, right? I mean, things are going to get weird there for the king, and I'm really interested to see what happens here as the white player is taking his time, and whether he moves his knight that was already on f3 and went to e1 right back to the square. We'll see if that loss of time comes back to hurt him. Okay, well, all games are underway now, partner, and as the fans can see here, you have your choice of action. If you are following us wherever you are on the web, Twitch TV/chess, we see so many of you. Shout out to all the regular fans who've been with us all season. Some of you may be newbies, but Distant Fire, Chess Bay, Liam Shez, everybody hanging out, Lalu over there in the main Chess TV chat. Just want to say hi to the fans and let you know that now that all games are underway, you can follow everything you want at chess.com/live and choose your own adventure. If you don't like where Robert, Hess, and I are analyzing on the left, that is a you problem, because you have the ability to log in and change it. And on that note, partner, where would you like to take this next beautiful part of the program? What game do we think is the most exciting of those 4 on the right?
Well, I don't know about exciting, but I want to take us to the game between Nihua with the black piece against Mate Shebenik.
You would do that. You would go Nihua on this.
Well, look at that bishop on f5. Exactly what I anticipated.
Me like it is exactly what you said.
Because if we just scroll back a couple moves here, we'll see that.
Let's go back here to that critical dark square exchange, and then, as you said, Mate Shebenik would have the opportunity to use the f5 square, and it's always nice when Bobby Hess makes a prediction that works out. We're going to see that eventually that square was used. And white is on the prowl here in the center.
Yeah, and if we just go back a couple moves before the knight captured on e6, because when black could have taken the knight on c5 instead of playing b6, sort of a critical moment.
Yep.
But by taking on c5, you allow white to take with the pawn on c5 and then plant this knight on d4. And that's a very strong square for the knight. Of course, it hits the bishop on e6, but just gaining more space because pawns further up the board restrict your enemy's pieces.
Yep.
And so instead of that happening, of course, he allowed the capture on e6 right away. And once his bishop's on f5, white has the control of the light squares. g6 is still not a possibility because the sacrifice always is possible.
Yep.
And he went knight e5 here, which I just think is a nice move, space-gaining move. f4 will follow suit. And look at the c6 pawn. Actually, how are you even going to protect that?
Yeah.
Because, if you go rook c7, maybe that defends it for now, but your rooks are kind of clumsy. Right. And they're stepping on each other, and at some point the knight takes c6 tactic may work out.
Not right away, everybody, just to show you, right? There's a chance there'll be a pin here that would be too much. But yeah, no, you're right. This is a problem.
Yeah, and so black may intend to play the move when rook c7 was indeed played.
Okay.
And the move c5 may come sooner or later, but that opens up the possibility for white to then put pressure on the d5 pawn if you ever capture on c5 and put pressure on d5. So I think Nihua for the moment is doing all right. It's a little bit cramped for my taste, but he will have striking opportunities with the move c5 in the future.
Yeah, and I agree. Despite the fact that this has been a very positional game, the fact that we highlighted these little things, especially the f5 square, and that they came to fruition, is a nice learning moment where we can take away that all the reactions that the players have right now is based on black would love to tactically, safely with the tactics, provide some freedom, eliminate the biggest weakness in his camp, and change the nature of the position. But as long as white has the initiative here, it's going to be hard for black to do that. So, but again, with every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And of course, if the move c5 is played, as you said, d5 will become weak. So we'll keep an eye on that. I think that Shebenik has a big decision to make right now. Because the knight was unpinned, there's no longer an issue on c8. Black does have an official threat, which is to take on e5 and just straight up win the pawn. So we'll come back to the board in a moment and see exactly what he chose to do on that. Let's move back to the board 2 battle where we had young Luca. We say young Luca. I think just young Luca became a nickname throughout the season. He's not super young anymore. Certainly not in the Pro Chess League. But in this position, he might be showing his age a little bit. I'm looking at it, and from where we left off, I'm starting to feel more and more confident about Wang Yue's position and the fact that he got developed. I see these weaknesses. I don't see white fixing them. I almost wish instead of the moves he played on the king side that he had tried for a move like c4. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you see about this position partner and black's potential of bringing the rook to the c-file?
Well, knowing Wang Yue as a chess player, I think his chances are phenomenal here. He's a great endgame technician. He's always been known for that aspect of his game. And as you just pointed out, the c3 pawn, that's the real target. Because white would love to make the move c4. But in any of the near positions, the near future positions, I should say, that after c4, you can even consider taking on d3, removing the guard of the pawn on c4. After pawn takes d3, you take on c4 now, and then you're just going to lose this pawn right away. Exactly. Rook c8 comes, and you're down a pawn. And, it's just not a fun position to play with the white pieces where, look, he's going to go for f5.
But see, this is what I'm nervous about, is this is the type of plan that while looks pretty, you're gaining space, you feel that with the pawn chain, this is normally, if the queens were on the board, right, and there wasn't this doubled structure over here, you might feel that way. This is the kind of thing white does when he's trying to launch an attack against the king. But here, a lot of this stuff might just be something that's a space expansion that is a waste of your breath, right? Because in the end, I'm not sure how much white is really going to be able to establish over here while Wang Yue just quickly brings the rook to c8. And it's going to be big trouble in Little China, or for a Little China. I don't know, but we have somebody from China who's applying big-time pressure on the c-file, well, and it's going to be tough for white.
If we just go back and move down to the move h5. So right there, that's a great move by Wang Yue that not everyone would notice right away. And the reason why it's so good is it gives black the opportunity to open up the h-file. f5 is white's idea no matter what. However, with the inclusion of h5 and then h3, at any point in the near future, black can capture on g4 and then bring the rook down to h3 or h2, attacking some of white's base. So instead, rook c8 and 92, look, white is going backwards. So now h takes g4, h takes g4, rook h2 is a definite idea. The idea being next to take the bishop on d3. Already ideas come to mind with knight takes d3, because if you have to take with the pawn. So I wouldn't do it quite yet, but if you ever take with the rook, let's say I'm forced to take with the rook, then bishop b5 immediately becomes a threat. So it's kind of becoming a difficult spot for Luca Squala, underrated or outrated, I should say, and I would consider a worse long-term position. So even if he's okay for the time being, the structure favors black so immensely that I think that Wang Yue is going on. And if you look at the time advantage as
I
well.
was just about to say, one of the things we highlighted early, right? Time is telling, and time, the enemy of us all, in this case, will be particularly dangerous for Luca Squala. Now, the next game that we haven't checked on a little bit is, let's see what happens in the reverse situation. We've been giving some love there to the board 1 from China, while board 4 from the Turtles is struggling. But here we have the board 4 for the Pandas taking on Luka Lenich. And not quite as rough for her with the white pieces, but I also like board 1 for the Turtles to be flexing his muscles here. This looks like a good position for black. This knight coming into a very strong center square. You've got some nastiness going on in the diagonal here, and I feel like white is already needing to find some critical moves here. There's immediate threats on d2 and d4, overwhelming the white pieces.
Yeah, and in fact, most of black's pieces are better than their white counterparts, was an essential point. The knight on e4 is better than the knight on f3 because it attacks the bishop on d2, while the knight on f3 only defends it. Moreover, the bishop on a6, not your typical diagonal, but in a position like this, it definitely becomes one. As you know, the bishop on g2 is off this diagonal. So the bishop has now decided to come to this a6 f1 diagonal for black, can go to c4 at any moment. The pawn on a4 may have extended itself too far because in certain lines where you attack the queen with a move like bishop c4 and simultaneously open up the a file for the rook, that pawn on a4 can become a quick target. So I think that white for now needs to find a way to coordinate the pieces better because the rook on e1 is a passive piece. And but
it's serving a purpose, an irritating purpose, that it has to guard the e-pawn, right? And that's where one bad thing leads to another. I know as a non-grandmaster that what it's like to play you guys is sometimes you feel like, it's really simple. I'd love my rook to be on a better square, but I can't move it right now, right? So when you get outplayed, usually it's a snowball effect, and at this point, feels like Shu Bertong is getting outplayed. Now, the game we haven't checked on in a little while, I believe, is this one here. Okay, Yuri Borashek playing the black pieces here against Grandmaster Zhu Zhangyu.
I like black's position.
Yeah, this is the one that we left at the nice little tempo there with the bishop on d1 and how that was handled, everybody. If you remember, the knight came back to f3, immediately playing queen to b4, inviting the endgame despite the pressure the queen was exerting, because now the knight gets off of that edge square and immediately into some really irritating spots like this c2 vulnerable hole, and that's where we got this position that you see on the board with black having the bishop pair and all the pressure to go with it.
And a fantastic move, pawn to e5, making use of the fact that knight on f3 is pinned, because if knight takes e5...
Which he may do at this point.
Yeah, you may sacrifice the exchange there, but you do lose some material, so you have to calculate that very carefully.
He has played rook c2.
Yeah, and rook c2, and look at those hanging pawns in the center. Is exactly what I spoke about before. The pawns do well to restrict the enemy pieces, but at the same time, they can become quick targets once this knight moves from h5. Again, this pawn on, from f6, say to a square like h5, the pawn on d4 becomes directly under threat. And moves like, now you have to take care of your e5 pawn, right? There's no time to sit and relax. Now, well, actually, I guess you don't. I was going to say you have to do something about it, but you can just leave it.
Yeah, I was just calculating the same thing, right? I mean, there's not really a threat. Let's make a crazy passive move because it doesn't matter, everybody, and I like doing it. If you take with the pawn, you're already in a position where trading on d1, not only are these some of the ugliest ducklings only a mother could love, but one of them immediately loses their life. So this is a position where white is kind of frozen, but the question is, what does rook c2 do? It threatens rook d2, and if white can over-defend this pawn, now maybe white has some options to deal with this issue, maybe push d5. So what does black need to do, and what can we take away as an instructive idea here for black to build the pressure before it breaks?
Well, that's sort of one of the reasons why I was trying to take on d4 was then to move one of the rooks, say, over to the e file and attack this pawn on e4. Now, white is able to play a move like h3 there and essentially defend the e4 pawn with the bishop. So it's becoming a very tricky position where you have to be concrete. You can't just waste time and I'll figure out the rest later. Because if white is able to consolidate, then the advantage kind of dissipates.
Well, but one thing that you highlighted about needing to move quickly and the fact that the position, maybe even though black has done well out of the opening, it's not totally clear yet. Look at the clock, right? Not quite the disadvantage that Mr. Luca Squala has against Wang Yue, but But black is down on time, so let's keep an eye on this, right? That's one of the things that happens in this format, and now I see the move.
Rook d7 's a
Okay,
good move.
okay, it's a good move. Okay, immediately I start calculating, can white take with tempo and take here because I saw the knight hanging with check in the end, but too many rooks on the wrong diagonal, in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's not really a threat, and we know the Pandas like the rooks from their logo there. So he doesn't want to give up all his rooks. Now black is going to prepare the double battery here. So, all right, we'll come back and we'll see what happens in this tension. There is one game, the one game that started first, that is getting closer. That is the game that Wang Yue is still in control over. Luca has managed the obstacle bishops, and for those who don't know, that does give him some outside drawing chances here, in the sense that if even if you lose some other areas of the board, these bishops can't challenge each other down the stretch. So maybe that helps white have a blockade here. I also see the e4 pawn is pretty easy to capture here soon. So what do you think about where this position has transitioned? I definitely like black, but has Luca improved his defensive chances or not?
Well, I would say the pawn is completely unimportant to the position, so I have to move h4. Let's say by black, kicking that knight from g3.
There he
was
goes.
Just played. Let's say knight takes e4. I'm going to take you immediately on e4. Rook takes e4.
And we don't have an obstacle bishop anymore.
We don't, but look at this knight. I mean,
this
knight,
is a monster.
The knight is better than the bishop. That said, that bishop can just sit on f2, where it defends the vital g3 square. It may eventually apply pressure to the h4 pawn, and white can consider playing moves like a4, c4 on the queen side and swinging the second rook into the game. And so I think that, while kind of structurally, black looks to be doing excellent, have excellent chances. At the same time, a pawn is a pawn, right? We can't just say, oh, the position looks better. Well, you are up a pawn, so you can.
Right. Well, I think we both agree black is better here, right? And this is Luca.
And I like the move order, right? Rook c4 is a move order, and there's a draw between Nihua and Mate Shevenik.
We could see we could hear the clapping. That makes me so excited. Way to go, fans! Way to cheer for the end of the game. So the draw was agreed to here. And what do you think about that? We're going to come back quickly to the end of the other games, but this one sort of surprised us with how quickly it came to a close.
Yeah, it seemed like white was slightly better, and there went the c5 break. So we were just back here, and looks like they traded everything on d7, and once that happened, I mean, that's kind of all you wrote here.
And that's essentially white saying that, okay, despite the fact that I like my opening, I'm playing the stronger opponent here. I'm gonna get the nerves out of the way, everybody. I'm gonna settle in here for the draw. Maybe we'll hear from one of those players here in a moment. I don't know, but curious to see what Mate Shevenik's mindset was here. Maybe he just didn't feel that he had enough of an initiative, decided that the simplification was the right route to take. And okay, not to say this is a guaranteed draw for those at home who maybe have lost themselves a rook ending from time to time. #guilty, this guy, right? But okay, a queen ending is one that these two GMs are not really going to fold on, and they simply settle on the repetition. So you surprised by that, or that's...
I think that Shevenik didn't want to overextend his position with a move like f4 earlier, so
Okay.
I think it's a pretty fair result. But again, it's one of those 2-3
Really
matchups.
back here was the critical moment, right? Do I go all in on this position, everybody, play f4 and bank on my stronghold, or am I nervous about things like c5 happening? Because eventually the dark squares could be a problem.
Yeah, and especially the e3 pawns, the backwards pawns, the ugly duckling in the position. So I think it's a pretty fair result. But Nihua, he's neutralized the white color for Mate Shevenik, so the Turtles do get their half point. The Pandas, of course, will be happy with that because of the black pieces. And we see another Wang Yue 1.
Wang Yue won, and we missed that moment. We will try to hurry through our analysis a little more quickly next time, but not a result we didn't expect, in the sense that Luca was under a lot of time pressure here. Things were getting difficult positionally as the knight dominated the light squares. But what do you think maybe he could have done different? He went with this plan to relocate the bishop. Maybe better to just forget the a-pawn, right? And because one of the things you can remember is if this pawn is lost, you might trade quickly and get yourself a new target. What would you have played in this position if you were trying to defend?
Yeah, very difficult spot because losing the bishop on d4, let's say, I would maybe play a move like king d3.
Yeah, I would have said the same.
But still, when the rook can come to a4 immediately, and you have problems on both sides of the board. Because if you go rook a1, let's say you get ultra passive and play rook a1, then this rook comes to g8. And now the g3 square, and you can't protect everything at the same time. The knight on f5 is just so much better than the opposing bishop. So Wang Yue with the black pieces scores an important point for Chengdu.
All right, well, that's what 2,700 grandmasters do. 26.99, but we're not going to hold a single point against the man from China. So he's really good, and there's some other really good chess players we want to check in right now, too. Shu Ruchong still has her work cut out for her here against the board one from the Turtles, Luka Lenich. Looks like he's managed to get his bishops on really fun diagonals, while these bishops sort of wish they had that kind of play. just looks good for black. Nice comfy center, targets on b2 and e2. White's not down any material, but really in control. But okay, well, you know what we're going to do right now, as we highlighted what was going on in this board 4 versus board 1. We're going to throw down to Alexandra Botez, who, while we have a moment here before these games get under critical time pressure, she's going to check in with one of our players and let us know what they think about the games in action.
Thanks, Danny and Robert. I'm here with Mate. He was the first one to finish his match today. It ended in a draw. Your teammate Luca also just finished his game. He lost. How do you guys feel playing against the Chengdu Pandas in the first game?
Well, they picked us. Probably they thought they had some good reasons to do so, and it's up on us to prove them wrong. Yeah.
How do you see the rest of the round going?
Well, at the moment we are behind, I think, but I think we have two promising positions left, and but I guess overall this will be a very tight match, as all our matches in this year's Pro League were. So nothing will be decided in the first round.
Thank you, Mate. Back to you, Robert and Hess. Danny and.
Yep. Well, we've. That was interesting, and so there you go. Mate Sebenik saying what the calling out the elephant in the room, right, or the turtle in the room, that they picked them and they thought they had good reason to do so, so they know they have something to prove. But going bold to say that he likes his positions on the remaining two boards.
Well, speaking of elephant in the room, Alexandra Bosch said Robert and Hess, so she clearly forgot your name.
It's been happening since I was a baby, so it's for a forgettable face I've always had.
I do agree with Mate, and it's nice to see that he feels that kind of ambition, right? He's like, he feels hurt a little bit. They picked us, so we had to prove them wrong. And as we sit here with the Luka Lenich position, I mean, it's what I predicted and what we both did. With black on the top board, the board 1s are just stronger than the board 4s. And here, with the black pieces and the 2.5-minute time advantage, the bishops, it's all about the bishops.
What can you say? I mean, this isn't happening just because I like drawing swords on the board, okay? I mean, this is because those bishops are beasts right now.
And we may not be watching St. Louis, but we're going to be talking about the bishops in this one. And look at the position. So from black's point of view, you don't need to rush. Because if you ever make a move like pawn to d4, and pawn to a5 isn't played, but I was going to say if you make pawn to d4, you might have a little bit of difficulty moving your c pawn.
Right, it becomes a backward pawn there.
And if you go pawn to c4, maybe you allow certain trades in the queen side.
You don't want to eliminate a weakness, everybody. You want to keep that pawn there.
Exactly, and it opens up that line for the rook on b1. That's an open file that's needed for counterplay.
Yep.
So now you have to decide where to move the queen. Now white can consider playing the move pawn to b4. And the idea behind b4 is if you go c4, which is what you want to do to keep connected pawns, b5.
Here we go, race time.
You have to calculate the consequence. Can I go c3 here?
Yep.
And in fact, you probably can.
Right.
Other than bishop e3 comes, and you calculate d4. And
right. Things are about to get wild.
All sorts of hanging pieces everywhere. And it's very difficult to calculate he went b4, she went b4, excuse me, and he immediately went c2.
Well, I was going to say, so that was a nice thing to highlight because it's something that when black is in control probably wanted to avoid. I think taking was the right decision because of the tempo, right? And that means white can't just go gobble this pawn back, everybody, and black will likely follow whatever the queen does with an immediate bishop c3.
Exactly the point I was going to say is first and foremost, b4 looks like a good move because you're going to get the pawn back, but now bishop c3 did come. In fact, you're not getting that pawn back at all, and you're just down a pawn with the worst position. This should be pretty easy for Luka Lenich to convert.
Well, we'll see if Mate Sebenik is right? I mean, he pointed out they called them out by choosing to play them, and they're down right now in the standings, everybody, 1.5-half, as you can see there above our four boards. But if this one goes Luka's way, that means really the victory of round one is going to come down to this game right here. And even though we really liked Yuri Borashek's start, I feel like something has gone awry here. What is going on with white's passed d-pawn that the black is going to have a hard time dealing with?
Well, what Borashek is showing, the knights are the best blockaders. So that knight is coming to d6 right now. And look at the bishop on g7. An amazing piece. The bishop on f3 protects a passed pawn on d5, but that's all it does. So the bishop on g7 has a much broader scope, and he went rook e3 right away. And now you can make a decision. Do you go rook d to e8 to keep control of the e file, and more importantly, the 7th rank? I think that's the option I would take. Because if you move somewhere else, let's say rook e to d7 to avoid any trades, It looks sort of awkward. So exactly, rook d8 comes, and the important point is you control c7 with your rook, you control c8 with your knight. That means the rook on c2 is not actually going to become super active in the near future.
Yep.
And I think black can start expanding with moves like f5, although you have to be concerned to an extent about knight coming to e6. So before you ever play a move like f5, you have to consider the consequences of that vulnerable square left behind.
Okay. Well, this is probably going to be the last game going, and right now both sides are sort of jockeying for how they want to approach the endgame. White has the passed pawn, but as Robert highlighted, the knight is blockading it, and there are other equal dynamics for black. But let's focus on the fireworks potential of this game, because Luka looks like he is bringing this one to a close very soon. He's managed to capture and hold on to that b pawn. White is about to go under the 30-second mark, and it seems like we are going to be all even waiting on the result of the final game.
Yeah, this one should be done in short order because, at least for right now, black is up a pawn, and now d4 can just come. And look at the pawn a5. It looks nice because there's no opposing pawns. It's a passed pawn. But after d4, the next one can be rook c5, and I don't know how you're protecting that pawn a5.
Grab that pawn before it gets any farther, and I think that at this point, Xu Rotong is doing her best to play quickly, not give up on her team, and you never know what can happen in online chess. We have literally seen some of the craziest things happen in the Pro Chess League. Players losing games, and whenever you're under time pressure, crazy things can happen. But assuming Luka takes care of business here, we're going to wait for his next move and see how he deals with the potential threat of a trade here. But I'm excited to see. We might be deadlocked heading into the next round. So.
Yeah, I mean, right now, 1.5 in favor of Chengdu, but we saw that Luka Lensch here in this game should be pulling in a full point, and then that leaves us with the other game between Borishek and Chu Xiangyu, who is, like I said, he's been performing well this season. He did have to struggle in the playoffs against Australia, and it seems like he's brought his struggles with him here.
Yeah, right now he's to be fair, this position is not one that is completely busted yet, right? You've got an obstacle bishop dynamic, as I highlighted on the other one, but all the other factors do favor black.
Look at that.
You love this king on g5. The endgame transition, everybody calls out a very important part of chess where you don't just sit tight anymore. You want your king to be more active than the opponent king, and that's going to be a big factor in this game.
And the Chu Ruotong game, she only has 15 seconds left, so let's jump right back there.
Absolutely. So it looks like rook c5 was played.
Yep.
As we were anticipating, a trade on c3 followed by an immediate protection of this pawn. She's holding on here with 15 seconds, but right now it's up for Luka to find the final hammer moves to say.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to rush, and that's the problem that some players face. They feel the need to just do something quickly. For example, a move like pawn to d3, where that pushes up another pawn forward, invites the trade, e takes d3, so d3, e takes d3, and then the problem becomes, well, a c pawn is very good, but this a pawn is also quite good. So if something happens where I have to give up my c pawn to win your a pawn, now we're in an endgame that's very difficult to win with a 4-on-3 on the king side.
Right. Well, and one of the things to highlight, though, on that note is you don't want to be in a position where the only extra pawn you have left is a 4-on-3 on the king side. It's one of the hardest extra pawns to convert. But at the same time, you really just don't want this pawn to get out of control because this bishop is really primed to help that pawn advance, given that it is currently preventing black from bringing more firepower to this square. So obviously we still feel like Luka is in control, but with Xu Rotong defending now, and he's getting down on time too. We'll see if she can hold on for a few more moments.
Yeah, and if we go over to the game between Yuri Borishek, something really bad happened. He blundered very badly.
Oh my gosh, Yuri Borishek. We missed the blunder, unfortunately.
Oh, he got fancy. Look at this. He went rook e4. I don't know if that was a mouse up and he wanted to go rook e3 because rook e3 was just a great move. And
he blundered the pawn.
Yes, the king is not rushing towards the pawn. He's rushing
away. Oh my
gosh,
everybody.
And if you go back just before king g2, after knight takes e4 check, king e2 instead. The problem is that after knight takes d2, d6, now knight f3 comes, the knight goes to d4 with check and hops back to e6 to stop the pawn from queening.
And you know what likely happened, fans, is that in his calculation, when Yuri decides to play rook e4, he probably calculated quickly that there's no way the knight isn't capturing on d2 and getting back at some point with a check. And the moment his opponent plays king g2, you have one of those moments where anybody who's been there knows your heart drops, right? Your gut sinks, and Yuri Borishek has perhaps just blundered away the first round for his team with this completely unnecessary, to be frank, rook e4. Black has a better king, a great knight blockading the pawn, and complete control over this file. this is the dramatic moments we live for. It's a heartbreaking one right now. If
let's go back to the Chu Ruotong game, speaking of dramatic, because there are 4 seconds left for Chu Ruotong in that game. And if you look at the position, Luka Lenich still up that pawn, but he's down under a minute as well. So he needs to find a way to convert this. And wait a second, isn't D3 check just
It looks like D3 check after taking is over. So we are going to see Luka Lenich convert on this one, everyone. Here comes a nice D3 check. Just to be clear, the discovered attack followed by capturing the queen is enough for Luka to bring it to a tie. But really, potentially, very sadly, it may not be enough for the Turtles to get out of the first round with where they were headed, which was a win, 2.5, 1.5. Right now, Ure will be lucky to draw this game as black.
Yeah, and it's not looking likely. And the big problem for him is the H pawn. The white still has an H pawn over there. There's a pawn, black pawn H4, which means the king can just can't go to G5. And don't be fooled. Don't go king takes F5 here because there are knight forks, knight G3 check. So
fork time.
Avoid that. Make a move like rook to G1. Put the rook on the open file. Put it to G7. Keep the king stuck over there on the queen side, protecting the pawns, and it should be winning for white. However, it's very easy to go wrong in a position like this. So,
well, and the knight is one of the trickiest pieces to deal with under time pressure. We just saw how tricky it could be when Ure actually blundered himself going for the unnecessary fork. And now you're really worried about gobbling that H-pawn. In fact, I don't think it's possible, as white will simply respond with rook F1, cutting off the squares for the knight, followed immediately by king G4, Robert, and this was a very nice find. King takes F5, quickly realizing that this knight was bluffing at taking the pawn here on H3. I think China is going to come away with a 2.5, 1.5 lead here.
Yeah, and you see the players on screen now. We have player cams up, and you see the Chengdu Panda is very, very calm here. And look at Yuri Borishek with his head in his hands.
Yeah, really.
He's got to be just absolutely distraught by blundering away that
It's heartbreaking, right? Especially because, again, he played such a great game as black against the fellow grandmaster opponent from the Pandas, and was just en road to a dominating technical win, as everyone who was with us just saw. But now he's up against it, and I think the move rook g2 might be resigns at this point. Rook g2 will simply trap the knight, followed by king to g4.
Okay, so he went king first, but now black, okay, so he's trapped it. Yeah,
good enough. Should be good.
The only thing that black can do is king d4 to c3, and the point is that white's not going to be able to hold on to all the pawns, but still, there's not enough here. Just take and play rook g4, protect the rook, the pawn from the 4th rank, and it's over.
And we might see a resignation right there. And watching Yuri Borishek on camera, you can see that definitely a frustrating one right there for the Turtles if you believed that they were en route to winning this match, 2.5, 1.5, or at least the first round. I think we all thought that they were, Robert. But you got to give the Pandas credit, right? Zhu, he defended and kept himself in the game, which from a practical perspective is all you can do when you're getting outplayed. Give yourself an opportunity, give your opponent a chance to go wrong, and Yuri Borishek did just that.
Yeah, and it's definitely a critical match because the board ones took care of business. They both won for their respective teams.
Yep.
And then we see that Chengdu wins 1.5 on those middle 2 boards. And Yuri Borishek with the black pieces played a phenomenal game. I mean, you have to give him.
It should have been 1.5 half the other way.
Exactly. Well, it's not quite winning
Close.
yet, but he should have been the one winning, if anyone.
Right.
And he played a great game, and that's what happens in chess. One slip.
Yep.
And all of a sudden your position can crumble. So unfortunately for him, he missed his beautiful tactic by his opponent. And so Xu Xiongyu gets the win, and 2.5, 1.5 in favor of Chengdu Pandas.
Yep. The next round of play will start momentarily. Not much of a break, just like all the weeks of the regular Pro Chess League season have been. So if you are here with us, don't go anywhere. Games will be starting momentarily. Robert are going to keep providing you with commentary and make some of our own anticipating predictions about what might happen now. So the Turtles are under pressure. They were doing well. They responded well to the call out, if you will, that the Pandas chose to play them. But now it's time to let go of the past, gather yourself, right? Control your emotions and just focus on what's in front of you, because at this point you can't play against your own ghosts, right? So what would you be saying to them if you were their coach and they're getting ready to recover from this round 1 play?
Yeah, the cliche is to just forget about your loss and go forward. It's very difficult in chess. But I think that Borishek should be actually quite happy with the way he played. And I say this to my students, I'd rather you play an excellent game and lose than play a terrible game and win. And you know that Xu Xiongyu for Chengdu, he may have won that game, but as a chess player, as a grandmaster, he's not happy with the way he played. So I think he is probably almost as rattled as his opponent is.
Right.
So if you see the lineups going forward, you have the 1 versus 3 now.
Yep.
And so you'll see that Wang Yue gets to play Mate Shebenik.
Right.
And that's an interesting matchup. We saw Shebenik in the interview with Alexander Botes. He seemed very calm.
Yep.
And he seems to be alive. He's saying
Right.
that, they picked us. I want to beat them, and we'll see if the rest of the Turtles can also
Yep.
join him in that fight.
Yep. All right, well, we're going to find out momentarily, everybody. Let's go ahead and bring up the critical moment of this last game that just happened again. For those of you who, by chance, are just joining us and made the mistake of not being here for the first round, as we get ourselves back into the critical position and highlight what so far has been the turning point in the match, back to the board on screen. The reason we had Robert highlighting the fact that black was better. I'm gonna wait a second for our crew to maybe throw the full board back up here. But what we had here was a game that really was in control for black because of the more active king, the complete control over the dark squares. In this case, the fact that the pawns are on. Okay, the fact that they are on the same color squares as the bishop isn't really a good thing for white. It really just makes this bishop even more tortured. And this is why Robert and I were predicting a great, at least a game where black was playing for 2 results, a win, maybe he gets a draw. But regardless of that, right now we're going to know, what we know happened was that black played rook e4 and made this terrible blunder of not realizing he can't actually finish this brilliant combination of taking the rook, because suddenly this pawn cannot be caught. An instructive point for everybody. Knights are the worst pieces about catching passed pawns. But no more from us on this critical moment. We are going to actually throw down right now to Alexander Botes once again, who is caught up with yet another key player in this first round matchup of the Pro Chess League semifinals between the Pandas and the Turtles.
I'm here with Shu Xiangyu, who just won the first decisive game of the match. Shu, how did you feel when you saw your opponent play rook e4?
My opponent saw maybe king e1, king g2, and I don't know why he missed this. Like, actually, it's very easy, and I found this. But I'm so lucky at this game, because if he move rook c7, I think black have a chance to win this game. But okay, I'm lucky. So.
Having won the first match, how do you feel going into the second match?
Actually, first game I play not so good, but I think I can find some, maybe next game I can play bad. No, but I really want to win this tournament, actually, our team. So, hope luck next game. So, yeah.
Thank you. Back to you, Danny and Hess.
And you have to believe him when he says how much he really wants to win. Like we said, he plays more on Chess.com than as much as anybody here at the event, and he sporting that awesome Pandas jersey proudly. So you see he's all smiles because of the result, but knows he's got some work to do.
Yeah, no, as I said, he's a grandmaster. He's disappointed in his own play, but he'll be back for the next game and really ready to play anyone who's put in his path. And the good thing about him on board 3 is he's actually as high rated as anyone that the Turtles have to offer.
Yep.
And so, Lucas Scuala did lose his game to Wang Yue on the board 4 for the Turtles versus the board 1 for the Chengdu Pandas. But he'll need to right the ship himself, because they look to him a lot. In the playoffs thus far, he's actually scored 4.5 out of 8 points. It's a plus score on the bottom board, and you don't expect that from teams in this league. So he needs to get back to his game, forget about playing a player 600 points above him.
2700s will do that to you.
Yeah, they're difficult to play every now and then.
Yeah.
But I think that if he can perform better in his next games, then they will have a great chance. But I'm looking at him on board 4 to actually put up some points.
All right, well, as the players get set, we take a moment to say hi to all of you in the chat. Shout out to ChessBay94. We've got Distant Fire. I want to remind everybody that in anticipation for the Pro Chess League Finals, we got some fun stuff you can use here. Let's throw out some of these Turtles emotes there for those of you who are rooting for a comeback. But, of course, you also have to give love to the top team so far with the best record coming into the finals right there. So if you are not a subscriber to the Twitch TV/Chess channel, now's the day to do it. We are here at the Pro Chess League Finals, and I know you are an emote spammer. Disappointed a little bit that I didn't see the fork emote spammed. when that failed fork. Maybe we need like a fork failure with a fork and like a little stop sign
spork.
over it.
Just get a spork.
A spork. A spoon fork would be a good fork failure. We got the Chess Bra fans. We've got everybody who hangs out with us on Twitch. Shout out to the Chess TV chat. We got Go Paul Revere. We've got Kings for Life. All of our premium members. Tom Petty, the one and only, has come back just for this match. He's hanging out in the Chess TV chat. And Robert, what can we tell the fans to wait for in the next 30 seconds as these players get set to start?
Well, I mean, now some of the matchups get closer, right? The 1 seed for the Chengdu Pandas and for the Turtles play the 3 seed for the opposing team.
Not as big of a gap. Still a gap, but not
exactly.
as big.
The gap shrinks, and with a 2.5, 1.5, that's as close as it gets. Besides obviously 2-2 tie. And so I think that now going forward, the Turtles they've proven that they can compete with the Chengdu Pandas, who are probably the strongest team in the league. And the Turtles underestimated every single match, as we've said time and time again. I think they have what it takes to fight back in this one.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to see if they can recover. We have set the tone and said hi to all of you in the chat. Again, thank you to everybody who is tuning in to the show, no matter where you are in the world. Use those emotes. Cheer for your team, for the Turtles, for the Pandas, or later on for the Eagles or the Bishops. Subscribe to our channel. Thank you to all of our subscribers, all of our premium members. With you, things like this are possible, and we are so excited for the next round of play. I cannot wait for what happens here and whether the Turtles can make a comeback, because I think we all are rooting for a close match, no matter what. And like you made a good point, other than a 2-2 tie, this is as close as it can be.
Yep.
So even with the slight slip there, we're still looking at a very tightly contested match.
And it was very balanced. I think that's matter of fact. It's not even just me saying that. The match was very close. It was 1.5 before a sort of slip of the mouse, if you will, caused the Turtles to go down 2.5, 1.5. They had just as good of a chance as the Pandas to be leading after the first match.
Yep. All right, well, as
they got underway.
It looks like it's underway. I just peeked over my shoulder and can see that the games are starting.
Yep.
Shout out to all of you fans downstairs. Thanks for being here at the Pro Chess League Finals. I see you guys. Rafa, is that you? Oh, no. I thought I saw a friend of mine. Never mind. Shout out to random guy who just got called out for being Rafa. Shout out to you, random guy. All right. Here we go. The next round is underway. Thank you, fans. Get a drink. Enjoy yourselves. And Yuri Borishek looking to rebound. Make up for that last game.
Yeah, and he's got the number 4 seed for the Pandas, Chu Ruotong, and with the white pieces here, it's a pretty typical Petrov. And what white has done is allowed a capture on c3 to double the queenside pawns, which are bad in endgames at trying to create passed pawns. However, when you're in this early stage of the game, they actually provide your king extra protection because there's another pawn in there that, for example, the knight on c6 can never go to b4.
They also open up the d file, which is only going to help white's activity and control over the center.
Absolutely. And so, white is a bit ahead in development, and then black has to decide where to castle. Oftentimes, black chooses the castle queenside.
Yep.
And the reason why is if you do choose the castle kingside, oftentimes white starts throwing some pawns down the board and figures the rest out later.
Right.
But for the time being, it looks like they're both choosing a very solid setup. The king can go to b2 if it so chooses, but then you have to sometimes be concerned of bishop to f6, and it stops the c-pawn from moving. So more likely, at some point, when black decides where they're castling, because if she decides to castle kingside, you don't really necessarily want to make the move c4 because it allows b5 and complication on the queen side. But if black were to castle queenside, then you would definitely consider that because there's no pawn breaks.
And the reason for that, everybody, Robert's highlighting, is that right now black is sort of holding the cards in regards to the tempo of the game, right? If she puts the king on the king side, we have an all-out race, right? You have white king over here, black king over on g8. White is going to rush everything, and black is going to try to do the same because the fact that we can open up the position around our king or open up the position on the other side of the board without weakening our king allows us to do that. But I'm looking at the position more and more sort of expecting that she's going to castle long here, mainly because at this point white has sort of taken the first step in that race, and if black were to play a move like castles, you'd immediately see g5, and the g file is going to become an issue. So with the move castles long happening, let's go back to Robert's positional idea of c4. This is really nice because it highlights the two things we've said that are good about these pawns. One, there's a lot of them protecting the king, and that affords them the ability to move and be aggressive and to hold back squares. But also working with the open d file, whenever you have double pawns, that pawn came from somewhere, so there has to be an open file. And here white could really use that to his advantage. So I like Yuri's position right now.
Yeah, and he went bishop g2 after castling queenside instead. And the reason why is that immediate c4 could be met by d5.
And trading.
Exactly. There's a bunch of trading in the air. So bishop g2 first allows
Black to decide, well, am I going to go d5 myself, which is actually not always the best decision because you
might weaken some squares here, right?
As you're highlighting, and the d5 pawn itself can become a target quickly.
Yep.
So instead, king to b8 was played, and that is just getting the king out to safety. Though now ideas like knight d4, what happens to knight d4?
Well, I think knight d4 forces a trade that that Black doesn't really want to make because of the threat here on c6, which would be really a problem if Black let White just trade it. But also the threat of taking e6 and getting the bishop here might be just as irritating. So if Black takes here, White's going to take and undouble the pawns, right?
You could take with that, or I was thinking taking with the queen. And
okay.
By taking with the queen, you threaten to go over to a7.
Ah, I didn't even see that.
However, I think the move here for Black is c5, and it looks very strange. But the reason why is queen takes g7 is not possible because rook d to g8 traps that queen over there on the side of the board.
Hold on to your ladies, boys. You don't want to get them caught in a situation like that. So yeah, that would be tough. All right, but still, knight d4 captures on d4, queen d4, c5. Even if you back up, Black still has some potential issues. A pawn that push can never return. d6 may be weak at this point later on. And the more you push those pawns, the more the diagonals become open. So, although I guess if she could get away with this tactically, might be better than just sitting tight. So maybe there is some things that need to be considered here, which is why probably that Borashek hasn't just immediately put the pony on d4.
Well, I was thinking that line, and another game is underway, but I was going to say knight d4. If you do take with the knight and then with the queen back, the problem is after c5, maybe queen f4 is the move, and that stops you from going d5 because I pinned the pawn, and then I will go c4 next and just stop you forever from playing d5.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Put my bishop on d5 instead of c4 actually, and just clamp down on that square. So we see the game between Nihua and Luca Squala underway. And, here we see Lucas Squad with the black pieces. And, I mean, a pretty standard-looking position. The bishop on the long diagonal on g7. Looks very nice, but the bishop on c8 doesn't. And that's typically the problem.
But this is a typical Maroczy bind where you have a structure that favors White in terms of space, everybody, right? You've got the pawns a little further advanced in the center, holding back b5, over holding back d5, and because of that over control of the light squares, there are some potential dark square holes that Black will often try to remaneuver the pieces. Sometimes you'll see this knight make journeys such as this to come around, even just to d7 to open up the bishop immediately, and then maybe access c5. So the positional battle in the Maroczy bind is White having more space, using the open lines and potential to expand, while Black tries to remaneuver and use the few squares available. But as you said, the bishop on e6, I say e6 because that's where it might go. The bishop on c8 is often sort of just chewing on granite, right? Not a lot of mobility, at least for the time being. The one thing that Black plays for long term is if you could get a position where you have a solo adventure of a knight versus bishop, you will have potential ideas of using the dark squares for an outpost. So, we'll see the balance that happens here between both sides and how they're trying to maneuver. We actually have a third game, which is also underway. I'm going to bring that up right away. This is, again, going to be a big one. Here we have a board 1 versus board 3 matchup. Wang Yue versus Mate Shebenek. A unique position. Let's back this thing up and see how we got here, Robert.
Well, it was just an early recapture on the c4 square. So oftentimes White delays that recapture, but here immediately went for it. And now after c5, it's interesting that Wang Yue is sitting and thinking because it's now his 6th move of the game.
Right.
You'd expect him to be prepared in a line like this.
Right.
And I guess one of his thoughts was instead of playing bishop g2, should he have played knight e5, which doesn't really come recommended as it allows Black to develop quite quickly. And here, after this decision by Shebenek, he's got his bishop to c6, which is great at countering the bishop on g2. Remember, in the first round of the match, I was talking about how that bishop on g2 loves its long diagonal. Well, now there's a bishop staring right at it.
Yep.
And from White's perspective, the queen on c4 is pretty decent. It can swing over to h4 depending on what Black does, or it can just stay there for the time being, though you have to be careful about not allowing it to be attacked, because certain pieces, for example, a move like if I go bishop e7 and castle, then I'm all of a sudden threatening ideas of bishop takes f3 and knight to e5. So it's a bit of a long story, but those ideas are in the air.
Both sides trying to position themselves for the better middle game at this point. Now, still not in the middle game, just getting underway, is our 4th and final game here between Luka Lenic and Zhu Zhengyu, who, of course, was sort of the inadvertent, unplanned hero of the first round of play. If you're just joining us right now, as you can see, the Pandas gained a 2.5, 1.5 lead as we head into the second round. So this is going to be a big game to see how Zhu Zhengyu. It's not just that he came back and held on to that game. That would make his emotional feelings be in a good place, right? But the fact that, as you said, he really just hasn't been playing well for the last few weeks, right? Despite how much he really wants to. He's been struggling. So we'll see how he can rebound and do against the board one from the Turtles.
Yeah, and he's a player who performed 100 points above his rating throughout the regular season. So it should not be discounted, all of his previous success. However, against Australia, which is a team that is even from top to bottom, they just have a bunch of 24 and 2,500 players. He just struggled. He went 1.5 out of 4. So he, with the black pieces here against a very strong player in Luka Lenich, he'll have to figure out a way how to equalize. In this position, the Queen's Gambit accepted. Oftentimes, Black seeks quick development with ideas like b5 and bishop to b7, but by playing b5, you've now kind of overextended your queenside in some variations where White just hits it with a4 at the right moment. And again, White is also trying to play e4 and rook d1 in the center. So more space.
One of the dynamics I'm just going to highlight real quick, because I think we have a lot of fans in the audience who, maybe whether you've noticed the pattern of commentary, when we start talking about these games in the early stages, you're talking a lot about these. You talk about the little guys. You talk about the pawns and the subtle ideas of how they position themselves. This rook just came to d1, so we have an immediate threat that might be the win of a pawn. You can take over the tempo. But to highlight Robert's idea, let's say b5 is played and this bishop retreated, really can go to either square. We talk about the fact that pawns moved can't return, and that makes them targets potentially, as well as tools, very useful tools to gain space. And the idea that a4 might come and then threaten to open up the rook, and then now you got to deal with that tension. Do you take it and leave the pawn here weak, or do you push it and open up more squares? And so as we talk about that, for fans who aren't of the Grandmaster Robert Hess level, one thing to remember as you look at openings and as you try to study and try to look at players' games of the top level, that don't just take for granted that they make these moves and think it's just an easy pawn to push or anything you can do blindly. You always have to think about where you're setting up your pieces and what weaknesses you might be creating. And in the early parts of the game, it's natural we talk about those little things because that's kind of, like, as we said, the footwork in a high-level heavyweight boxing match, right? The little things you don't notice until the highlight of somebody getting knocked out.
Absolutely, and the key points for these pawns is once they move forward, the square right next to where they move to is now unprotected.
Yep.
Right. So if you move from b7 to b6, then c6 and a6 become potentially penetrable. And so here in the early going, moves queen off the file. But this game is we'll get back to. I think it's not the most interesting of the match, and
Okay. For sure. Just highlighting the pawns is something we wanted to do there, but now we're back to a game where we also can see some advancing. The move f4 has just been played by Yuri Borashek, threatening f5. So we did see knight d4 come in, but rather than where we left off, wondering whether the queen and bishop battery would try to have some fun over here, Yuri simply took back with the bishop, probably because he wanted to take here, right? The lady taking there wasn't an option. She would have been trapped. But the bishop has a full threat. That forced a defensive move, and now he can gain a tempo. Immediately, the move f5 is coming, and this bishop is running out of squares. So I'm liking Borashek's play right now.
And there's immediately problems in the e-file that I noticed. For example, if you make the move f5, trying to prevent White from doing the same, if I can double up quickly on the e-file, there are two bishops there, and they're not protected very well. So also just pawn takes f5, and ideas with bishop to d5 will come into play as well. And the g7 pawn might become extremely weak. Yep.
And this sort of the battle here where every player is reacting to what the other side has to do, Xu Rotong has had to defend the king side, but now you have a really tough decision to make. Do you make a passive move with the queen just so that you can back up this bishop and she won't, and the bishop won't be trapped, or do you risk some sort of idea of advancing the f5 pawn, which it looks like she has done on the board? And now we're going to see how does Borashek balance the fact that there is a small threat here to take. Okay, he decides to defend it first before gobbling squares on the e-file. But I like your plan, partner. I think that when White comes here to e1, there's even an immediate threat of just quick battery and losing a piece, right? So look for Robert's idea of using the e-file to be a critical one here for Yuri.
And there's a central issue for Black over there on the king side, because, on the right side of the board, because look at the pawn on g7, still stared down by the bishop on d4. At some point soon, White will go h4, consider gaining more space on the king side. It's just really an unpleasant position for Black when you lack space and then you lack a clear direction.
Yep.
And that's the hardest thing for players to do, is when they don't know their exact strategy, they often try to get active counterplay by making moves like c5, like some kind of very ambitious move that could backfire quite quickly after just simple retreat, like bishop to f2.
Right, or e3, and either way, you've got more weaknesses to deal with there. Now, c5 may be something she tries to do here, but you're right? Players who are strong, too, like, they don't like getting outplayed and then just sitting there waiting for the hammer to come down, right? They're going to try to do something, but because she's sort of running out of active options, she may get desperate with a move like c5. So,
and her clock management is something to be noted as well. She's down 2.5 minutes on the clock, and that's not helping her case at all. Even on the material, worse position, and definitely much worse in the clock.
All right. Well, we're going to come back to this one. Keep an eye on it. It was the first game that got underway here. Let's jump back to the game between Luka Lenic and Zhu Zhangyu. And, okay, this not the most exciting game, so we may just take a quick look here because at this point, board 1 for the Turtles. Small edge out of the opening, has a nice piece on d5 here. We see that when we left it, d5 was played, but still a lot of time on the clock for both players. And the one long-term thing we'll highlight is Black has this 3-on-2 pawn structure, which may lead to something if the transition went to an endgame quickly. Black might have space there that can compensate for White having more active pieces. So, all right, that's a small foreshadowing of what happened there, but let's move back to this Maroczy bind game where we did finally get something active here played. The knight comes to d5, where it belongs in the Maroczy, Robert. Let's talk about the dynamics here. These knights are super irritating in this structure, but the moment you take it, you invite other positional problems. Maybe talk a little bit about this for everyone.
Well, can I just say that I hate playing these positions on the Black side?
Yeah, I know you do.
You lack
So
space.
I want you to defend Black's position here.
Okay, I'm going to try. I really don't like it.
Okay.
But, the real issue is, from Black's point of view, is you really don't have the space, right?
Right.
And making a move like queen to a5, saying, I
Yep.
want to get some more space. Well, now you made e7 a little bit weaker, so if that knight somehow gets kicked from c6. But also, White can always respond with a4.
Yep.
Gaining even more space on the side of the board.
And after that, sometimes b4 comes, and then b5, and it gets real weird. Yep.
Yeah, and not to mention the move like knight f4 is now a threat because the bishop on e6 has nowhere to go. And I can shatter your pawn structure when I capture on e6. So it looks to me that, in general, right, White is playing with the pawns and gaining space, where Black is trying to maneuver the pieces, but you can't do that. You sort of need to fight pawns with pawns.
Right.
And here you're not able to do that, in which case I think that Black is just generally speaking, very difficult position to play in.
And I'll highlight, you talked about Black's inability to do things like moving the queen without worrying about e7. We talked about the possible threat of knight f4. But let me highlight the first thing we touched on, and maybe what Luka's thinking about right now, everybody, is do I take here on d5? And one of the common issues with that in this Maroczy bind structure is, yes, you change the dynamic and you get rid of the powerful knight. But after White captures back, say, with the e-pawn, we have what's known as a Marco-Hop structure, where this pawn on e7 is not just backward, but immediately exposed to, in this case, the ray of the queen. Sometimes it's a rook. And this is a real problem because the pawn on e7 is permanently weak, and the only way to free it up might be to move it, but then you run into either captures or capture via en passant, and then the d-pawn becomes weak, and maybe the king side. So the positional problems mount on themselves when White takes on d5, not to mention that you did lose the bishop pair. So I agree with you, partner, and it's hard for us to be beating up Luka's positions here. We know he just had a tough loss to the board 1 of the Pandas, and he may be on route to getting outplayed by the board 2. So we'll see if he can hold ground and not get himself under too much time pressure, but it's looking a little bleak right now for young Luka.
Yeah, so older Luka has slight edge. Younger Luka looks to be in some trouble. And let's see how Mate is doing here with the black pieces. Now, first thing I noticed, I love his control of the d4 square.
Okay.
And, well, actually, really the first thing I noticed is look at the minor pieces all just in a row.
Yep.
But he went 96.
Is that just because you like shapes and colors? Vin Diesel fans, get your coloring books out.
Well, the knight on f5 looks like a bit of a menacing piece because
Yep.
it attacks g7. But the knight on e6 is a great multi-purpose piece. It defends that pawn on g7 and can come to d4 at any moment. So Black's position looks excellent. I like this control of the central squares.
Mm-hmm.
White can't play a move like f4. Well, maybe you can consider it because there are some tactics in the air.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes you can do it. It would be positionally very harmful for the king, but if takes maybe immediate e5
and then
stuff.
f3, and I
Oh,
think,
man, yeah, now you're talking dirty. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this could get weird here, but I do think that despite the pieces being well placed, I'm going to take the opposite position. I feel like White is in control here just based on the fact that f4 is coming, and even though Black has the dark squares, it seems that there's threats of knight d5, and you can't sit on the center with the king if the e-file opens up. But if you castle, now my knight is already in prime real estate on the king side here, and maybe that's bringing tactics. So call me biased to the 2700, but I like White's position.
I don't know. I think I'm going to
Can
go
I
against you
just
here.
say that I love when we disagree?
Okay,
The
well-
sexual tension here is palpable.
Well,
I love it.
Well, Shebenik here with the black pieces, I like his spot because here the d4 square is firmly under control. Yes, if you castle, you have to consider sacrifices on h6, which is why I'm not going to castle for the time being.
Okay.
And so I can just determine and wait for the moment to do something like that. I can play the move. I guess I can't play g6, which is what I wanted
No,
to
you
do.
can't.
Well,
Look
then
at that.
the h6 pawn, yeah.
I don't know.
Ah.
Hey, you know what? We can disagree to we can agree to disagree.
We can disagree
or
to
we
disagree?
can disagree to disagree.
Yeah.
We can talk or not talk for hours. Your call, whatever you're
Okay.
into. Anyway, so all right. Well, we'll see how Wang Yue approaches this position, but it will be an exciting one. I'm going to let you pick our next flavor partner where you want to go, because the one that is the first one we looked at, it looks like Xu Rutong did push the c5 pawn, and followed that by closing up the king side. And actually, I mean, that's sort of helpful now, right? Because if she can get g6, the worst of her weaknesses on the king side have sort of disappeared. And the problem is white has the time now to maybe play a move like c4, and as you highlighted earlier, the bishop comes to d5, and black is just sort of begging for scraps on the d file for the rest of the game because the d pawn is so weak.
Well, my first thought was queen e2 here, simultaneously attacking two pawns, the h5 pawn and the c5 pawn, because the rook on d1 now pins the pawn on d6.
Oh, you nasty girl.
And
Yep.
so I don't know if black is actually able to defend both, because a move like g6, I just take that pawn. Same thing
Yeah.
with bishop f7. I think I
Yep.
get away with it. So
Yep.
queen e2 here is a nice double attack.
I like it. I love it. I want more of it. In fact, I'm not sure what she does against that.
Yeah, it's just frustrating to deal with, because if you lose the h-pawn, then I just roll my h-pawn down the board.
She'd probably want to hold on to the c-pawn, but yeah, this is the most dynamic 2-on-1 you could ever have. Rook already behind it, back up the queen and push it, and that's a problem. So, okay, well, I was highlighting the underdog in this game's perspective. I was just testing you,
Okay.
and you found white's win, so good job. All right,
I'm glad I passed.
Let's move on.
And it looks like Shebenik, if we just hop back there for a quick second, it looks like he's gotten out of the worst, because right now, I mean, look at the position.
Okay, you'd like to think you were right about this one. The jury's still out.
I'm certainly right, and Ure is on the other board, so don't, it's not out. He's just in a different game. But here,
But I said, very, very good. The jury, it's Ure. You know what? Now you're going above my head with the jokes and the chess. All right. But back to Luka Lenich's game. I saw a check on the board, and you know how I feel about that.
the Checolino Stramba.
Yep. Whoa, nothing. It's nothing, though. Just a check. Checks are for potsers.
I don't see anything for white here.
Yeah.
I think that Xu Xiongyu has done well to defend, and he's played poorly, I would say, in the first game, relatively, and in this game he's doing just fine.
Yeah, defending well. Sometimes it takes playing a stronger player to force you to raise your game to the level of your competition. He's down a minute and 50 seconds on the clock, roughly, but I agree, black's position is totally safe. So, okay, well, we'll see if Luka can wiggle his way to some sort of advantage in the endgame, given that he is the stronger player on paper. But the game I'm going to jump back to, Robert, because your prediction was not played. So let's try to anticipate why Queen E2 wasn't as good as first thought. What was it about Queen E2 that perhaps Borishek saw that we didn't, or do you think he blundered it?
Well, Queen E2 is a very weird move because you're putting your queen directly in line of a rook on E8. Of course, there are 3 bishops in the way, so it's not that big of a deal.
There's a lot of pieces in the way of that, yeah. So what's the tactic? So there was this move, and if you took, now I take here. Was this possible?
That's sneaky.
Maybe this was his idea. I only find good moves when other people miss them.
Yeah, so Queen F3.
Okay. Right, and now I back it up.
Okay.
And you're going to win D6.
Yeah, I'm going to take D6 anyway.
That's real dirty. Because now white has this tactic, everybody. Robert has problems here. He's real aggressive against the black king. Yeah, so Queen E2. So let's see that again. So maybe there was another idea. What about moving this bishop? Aha. And but now you could also take this one.
Exactly. And bishop takes B3, I guess is possible.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated. Maybe.
Okay. So maybe this was the idea. Similar idea in the sense that black was trying to clear the e-file to take advantage of something to compensate for the h-pawn. And maybe there were some tactics there. Obviously, Ure thought about it, didn't like it, decided to go for the positional approach we first highlighted, which still is not bad for white. I mean, it's a position where white is kind of playing for 2 results here, everybody, and that's a chess term when we mean that white is just better. The d-pawn is the biggest weakness on the board. The d5 square is owned by white. So we like white's chances, but will it be enough to win? 2 results means if you don't get a win, maybe white is in control and probably should get a draw. So we'll see if Ure can kind of maneuver his way to an edge here in the endgame.
Yeah, just uncomfortable for black, lacking the space. And at some point, if, let's say, put the bishop on c3 and do things like that, maybe white can even consider expanding on the queen side with ideas of b4, getting the rook to the b file. And
well, one thing you got to be careful of is if a d5 shot comes in at some point, trying to eliminate your weakness for tactics.
Yeah.
Not possible yet because
Right.
the pawn takes with tempo, but okay. All right, I hear you. And I agree. White's playing for 2 results. A lot of other games still to be played. Shout out to everybody who's with us. We are running on adrenaline here at the Pro Chess League Finals in San Francisco. Living on a prayer, running on adrenaline. We are just excited for what's going to happen here over the better part of the next few hours. If you're just joining us, don't go anywhere. The first ever esports chess finale, and I see so many of you regular names in the chat. Robert, where do you want to go next?
Well, we have progress for sure in the game between Luca Scuala and Nihua. So Nihua with the white pieces, playing the board 4 for the Turtles here.
Okay.
And what Luca did, or what he was forced to do, is trade the bishop from g7, that fianchetto bishop. And in doing so, he's gotten rid of a defender for his king. But he also has gotten rid of a couple of white's more active pieces.
And it's okay. I was just going to say it's a real problem if you still can't take this knight tactically, right? We talked about the problems of taking it positionally. You get to a point where if you can't take it because of tactics, and the knight is a super active piece in the center here, white is really going to be aggressive. The point, everybody, was c5. The tactics, just to show exactly the tactic I'm talking about, taking c5 is not an option. As bye-bye birdie on d8. So that means maybe black has to take now, right? Maybe Nihua is forcing Scuala's hand here.
But even if you take with the bishop, I can still take with the rook probably, and just keep control over the d file, give you an isolated pawn.
Yep.
I could have also considered taking with the pawn on d5 and going for the move c6 myself and trying to create a passer.
Yeah.
I would rather take with the rook. And
I agree. The d6 pawn seems like the biggest weakness, not going anywhere. So this is the issue with the bind, as we talked about. It was space disadvantage. White has lost some of the space advantage in the sense that pieces have been traded. That usually helps the person with less space. But now we see weaknesses popping up, as Robert highlighted.
And the clock situation is terrible for Lucas Scuala.
Yep.
With only less than a minute and a half left, he's in clear trouble.
Yep. Well, and he's in clear trouble, and if he falls, it won't be the most surprising result. He is the board 4 for the Turtles, but the issue is whether they're going to convert on boards where they are the favorite, and right now it doesn't look like they're doing their best in that effort this round. Luca up a couple minutes on the clock here, the other Luca, the captain Luca, but still I just don't see anything really that exciting for White in this game. He backs up to d1, but trades are happening. I feel like we're getting closer and closer to an endgame where if anybody's better, Robert, am I crazy to like black if pieces keep getting traded just because black has a 3-on-2 and I'll start pushing b5 and b4, maybe c4? What do you think about this position in regards to who would be better as pieces start getting traded?
Yeah, if the queens got traded, then black is very happy with that 3-on-2 majority on the queen side. That said, after bishop e6, I don't expect the queen trade because where white's advantage really lies is the fact that king on h8 is, there's some ideas
maybe
with lining
some
up
tactics,
the queen
right.
and bishop,
Right.
but it's not really in the air. So I don't see any sort of real attack happening. I think black is in very well to fend off most of the threats. And the game I'm interested in now is the game between Mate Shebenik with the black piece against Wang Yue. And look at this ending here, right? Wang Yue has a worse pawn structure. In fact, double isolated pawns in the d-file, opposite colored bishops. And sometimes this helps white in the sense you can go knight d2 and bring it to c4 or e4. But I'm not believing that much. Black can just go, okay, I was going to say rook d8 first, but king f8 makes perfect sense. And putting the king on e7 also makes sense because if you capture on d6 and I take with my king, I'm perfectly happy. Putting the king on e7 is a bit of a risk because after king e7, knight c4, now rook e1 is a threat. We have to be concerned about the e-pawn. So it's not that easy for black to play, but it should be pretty decent for black here.
I mean, I'm not surprised that your immediate bias was to like black's position here, given your early prediction. But again, I'm going to disagree. Maybe I just love tension. I think white's fine. I just don't think that this is really a position that that if White does want to put the knight on c4, here's my argument, devil's advocate. The knight on c4 also helps. At some point I may play a5. I know I'm not thrilled about putting pawns on the enemy dark square, but you're never threatening b5 here because my knight is going to immediately find the c6 home, right?
Right.
So if the knight comes to c4 and I do have these threats of rook e1, and if I play a5, I've really sunk that knight in there. This pawn may be blockaded now, but it's also a passer if you get any frisky ideas. I think probably the most likely result here is actually a draw if both sides sit tight. But I think Wang Yue, knowing, like you said, he's playing for 3.5 out of 4. I mean, he plays a5 here. I think he's going to play knight c4. Okay, the question is knight c5 coming in, or is there tactics with things like knight takes e5? We'll find out. But the idea, everybody, is the bishop may be overloaded.
Actually, here I would go knight b3, and if you go rook e1, just to keep your knight protected, I'm happy to take on e5, put my king on d6, and enter a much better ending for black.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with these double pawns. Even if I have to give up one from black's point of view, the endgame is just so favorable. Rook c8, or you take on an a5.
You can take a5. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point, and I think that's really instructive line. Jokes about our tension aside, I think that's a great point because the double pawns are that's really black's chance to favor coordination over material, right? Even if he loses a pawn temporarily, as long as he makes sure he gets the king there, gets the knight on a happy square with a happy future, he should be okay. And so White wants to be aggressive now. Plays f4. That's an interesting move. The point, everybody, is
we
if
got to
black
go to the
takes
Chu
me,
Ruotong game because
we got to go there, but this might win a piece.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
but
Excitement everywhere.
She has 2 seconds left.
2 seconds. Okay, is time pressure going to be a repeating problem here for Chu Ruotong? I guess it happens when you play much higher rated opponents, but right now she better be ready to pre-move. At this point, you could almost do one of those, you could pull a little peasant here, an Alejandro Ramirez, and just try to get your opponent to mouse slip.
I see you taking digs at Ale over there.
Handi's here somewhere. I'm sure he heard it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, though, is even let's say you make a move like bishop takes f8, right? You have to go rook takes f8.
Well, she'd have to pre-move it. She could lose on time.
She could lose on time. She'll pre-move that and queen e5.
Immediately.
Right, just something
that's what gets you to lose on time.
Exactly. And the point is that after pawn takes e5, I take your queen on d7, and you don't want to take my pawn on f4 because rook to e7, and, well, maybe you'll get away with it because you have these f pawns, but still, it's very risky here.
Yep. No, and the point is that in this format, in this really exciting setting, you have she not have her she does have her hand on the mouse. I was looking at her and she's super nervous. Everybody has her hand on the mouse. She can safely pre-move rook takes f8 because it's a pre-move capture, right? That's a pro tip for everybody who's looking to get better at their online blitz and bullet skills. If you pre-move capture, the advantage is this, Robert. If Borishek didn't take, okay, now she can move. Okay, she barely does it with 1 second. She gains 2 seconds back on the clock. So if you pre-move capture and they don't do it, it immediately will reset things and you can find a new move. But now, 0.5. And people, you can hear the crowds going, no, she pre-moves right back to b8.
That's smart. That's actually really smart. Just keep doing it.
She's gaining time. She's gaining a little bit of time.
She's actually playing extremely well considering the time situation. Queen f6 here, though.
Queen f6 is just a strong move anyway because g6 is falling everybody.
Rook e8. Take rook e8. Look at her. She's playing excellently.
Excellently with no time on the clock. Borishek, one of the risks of trying to play fast and flag your opponent is you might mess up your advantage, right? Because you're playing on the clock.
That was an unbelievable find there. And the point about rook e8 is you threaten the rook on e1, so you can't take on g6.
And if you trade, the queen can take back everybody, and all of a sudden black is guarding everything.
Wow, what a find.
She is earning her spot right now for the Pandas in the final. You can hear the crowd behind us getting excited. She's nervous. The camera is up on her grill. There's a cheer here, though. What happened?
I think they're just cheering.
Okay, they're just cheering
her play.
Okay, they're excited. You can see she can't hear them. We can hear them. She's stone cold locked in. Stone cold killer.
And Mate Shebenik, Luka Skuala actually is playing with 2 seconds left. So she's playing with 6. Luka Skuala is playing with 2.
Yep.
I mean, this is just nuts everywhere.
Unfortunately for Luka, he's also much worse in it. Okay, that was super nice technique right there by Borishek, everybody, despite the excitement. And, wait, is she going to get a draw?
No, she's not.
No,
F7
my gosh, I freaked out in case you didn't hear that.
Yeah, F7 comes and she's lost, so she's losing this one.
Okay, she loses on time. Great game. We immediately bounce back to another one where Luka Skuala, as you said, is riding on the clock, under time pressure.
Just take on b5 and go bishop takes b5 and an extra pawn. E7's weak.
Pawn is a pawn.
Yeah, there's some counter chances on the b file if you take too quickly on the b5. The queen comes to b6, but it's not looking very good. But that was a phenomenal finish there.
Yep.
Chu Ruotong deserves a lot of credit because she defended valiantly with no time on her clock.
No, she really did, everybody, and that takes a lot of heart, a lot of nerves, especially when you're just literally riding up the increments. So great game by Chu Ruotong, but a big win there for the Turtles. Okay, Nihua is putting on a show right now, Robert. That's an elevator rook lift.
Bishop
that
h5 now.
That would make Larry Christensen proud, everybody. When you can split the board, here comes rook takes g6.
And there's going to be mate, but even c7 wins a rook, right?
c7 wins a rook. We can
rook
choose
c3. Let's go rook c3. Another rook lift.
Yep. Choose between favorites.
And
you can
game
go
over.
go Yasser Serwan and push them, baby, or you can go for the mating net. And all right, well, Turtles win, but the Pandas strike right back. A big win by Nihua. We have 2 games still left in action right now, and we have okay. I'm right back to another time pressure game. Mate Sebenik. I don't mean to call my shot, Robert, but I mean, do you want to call my shot for me, or it's your call?
This wasn't a skill-based choice by you. You just got fortunate here.
This was me betting on the 2,700. Guilty as charged, but I have no shame.
No, this is
and he's going to take the win. Yeah, well, okay, but in all seriousness, we got to see how the other one finishes. But we're going to come back to this because I love when we disagree. The fans love when we disagree. It leads to some instructive moments. We got the Yaz emote, push 'em, baby. Let's get some emotes for the Pandas and Turtles, people. Let them know you're here in the Twitch chat. Cheer for your favorite team. One more game going, the least exciting game of the round. But something has happened.
Yeah, knight e4 is now a threat.
Yeah, we have weaknesses.
Yeah, so the point is that at b4 from black here, that you can go knight e4, and so you attack the pawn on c5, threaten knight f6 with check.
Yeah, this is the
that,
real
That check
one
can be
here.
very annoying.
Yeah.
And the bishop now can escape without suffering a bad fate on the c3 square. It was previously trapped.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, Luka Lenich just – that's the thing in these type of positions. Even if you're not better, you just create little weaknesses here and there.
Yeah, he's Georgian grandmastering him right now.
Georgie
Kachis really did that to me a few times, more than I'd like to remember.
You just want your opponent to falter. Right? That's really the chess you're playing.
Chessbait 94 spamming the turtle emotes. She's rooting for the Turtles right now. They've got their work cut out for them.
So
but
b4 was played. So
okay,
94.
but here comes 94, right? Is there a trick we don't see?
So
he takes first. Why take instead of 94?
I would have played 94 first. Just
I
in the
agree.
hope
But the point of 94, the way Robert liked it, everybody, is it was a double attack.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity in my estimation here.
Okay, he's up on time, and this is what Luka Lenich needs to do. He needs to complete the Georgian prophecy and really get black under time pressure in a position he has no business winning, and then you win.
Yeah, but I just don't like the decision to play take on b4 first because you give your opponent extra ideas in the position. If you just scroll back a second. Here, if you played before taking on b4, if you play knight e4 now, king f8's impossible because then knight takes c5 and I attack your queen.
That's a tempo.
Yeah, that's a tempo move. So a missed opportunity there. He played bishop f6 in the game, and I still do like White's position.
And I still think he's created enough weaknesses that under time pressure, this is going to be tough for Zhu Zhangyu, but we'll see.
And is it too early to call this a must-win game with Chengdu up 4.5, 2.5? I mean, that's a really big lead.
You know how I feel about making unnecessary drama out of nothing. I love it. But I think it is a little early. I still think that the Turtles have a chance in the final rounds, especially as the board 3 and board 4 face off against each other. But I agree that it's getting tricky here. You need your board 1 to do what they're supposed to do. You need Luka Lenich to find a way to wiggle a victory here.
Yeah, just put knight back to e4. Just keep playing methodically, right? Don't do anything too drastic. The thing is that pawn on b2 can go to b3 and stop both queenside pawns for the time being. And the weak king. It's not that weak for black, but it is a bit exposed, and that can be the problem for black as the game continues here.
Yeah. Well, but the other thing is if White gets nothing out of this, okay, king being a little weak, Robert, the pawns that were pushed that changed the nature, he's got a 2-on-1. So this. I mean, I don't want to call a different shot, but at this point, it feels eerily similar to last game, where Zhu Zhangyu was under pressure, being outplayed, but in the end, somehow he's got the 2-on-1, which is the most dangerous potential for a pass pawn. And then we push him, baby. And what happens there? This is dangerous.
It could be dangerous, but the knight on e4 can always come back to d2 and even go to c4. And so I think the pawns are actually stopping their track. I like this decision. That's even better than what I was suggesting. And the queen on b2 now if that knight moves, there's of course the queen's trying to come to the h8 square.
Shout out to all those in the Chess TV chat. I don't know where you found those panda emotes, but I love them. We need more team emotes on the Chess.com chat. Tom Harper, Kings for Life, all of our regular premium members chilling out. Zhang Yong Sil, panda emotes, good job.
Well, knight g4 here, right? That's an interesting move.
Knight g4.
Knight g4 looks great because
Yep.
I guess queen c3 is the intention. But
Yep.
the good news for white is after knight g4, queen to c3, you can even consider ideas, maybe not now with queen e2 and giving up the b pawn if your queen can jump into the action.
Right.
I wouldn't give it up now.
No, but you're right, though. This is, and I'm going to highlight anyway because this is instructive for the fans, that the opportunity to flip the script, right? Sacrifice the thing that you're supposed to be defending to expose your opponent's weakness. Best defense is a good offense. Okay, it may only work if white actually gets a mating net,
Right.
but it's certainly something as the players are under time pressure to keep an eye on.
Right. And so, like, knight h7
Okay, he gives check. He's going to he's a little tickle. Knight g4 now, I expect. I expect your move to be played. I don't think Luca's going to settle on a draw. A 5-3 deficit. Okay, not the worst. I'm not calling it this is a must-win, but it's not the best, right?
There's a big problem, though. Knight g4, right? Queen c3.
Okay.
And after knight g4, queen c3, if you go like queen b1 to keep the pawn protected, then a move like f5. And you can't take on h6 because your knight gets trapped.
Oh, that would be nasty.
Yeah, and then e3 is also falling too. So it's I guess you don't really have the opportunity that you'd like to play a move like knight g4.
So he may have to settle on a draw. He's calculating right now, about to get
Maybe
under a
queen
minute.
c1.
I think from a match strategy perspective, though, I'm
Yeah,
guessing Luca's going to try to win.
But queen c1, queen c3, and black is the only one who can win a
Okay,
position.
let me play devil's advocate and say that white can go for this line now. Okay, let's say I'm ready to sacrifice the queen to come get some counterplay. I know what you're thinking, queen e6, and I got nothing.
Yep.
And you may be right.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay, you may be right. As soon as I was about to do it, I said, oops, I got nothing. Okay. Yeah, so this is tough. You're right. Does that mean we're going to – yeah, I think
we're just
we
seeing a
may end
draw.
up seeing a draw because too many riskets, not enough biscuits if you are in the Turtles' corner. They settle on a draw.
Wow.
And, well, both players get up from their tables.
Wow. And that's a huge half-point save there.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't even call it save because it wasn't
Yeah.
that much in trouble, but that's
Yeah.
a huge half-point there for the Chengdu Pandas.
Absolutely,
because
yep.
now up 5-3 halfway through the match, and I mean they've looked pretty good. Wang Yue in particular has done very well.
Wang Yue has done what 2700s do so far.
Yeah.
He's taking care of business. The Pandas have a 5-3 lead. If you're just joining us, thank you for being here, fans from all around the world, regardless of whether you at Twitch TV/chess, Chess.com TV, or many of our Twitch partners hosting this show. Grandmaster Robert Hess and I will have the call for a while, and we have a super tight match right now, 5-3 in favor of the Pandas. But now a two-game lead is still super tight in my mind. But the problem is all the momentum seems to be favoring the top seed as Wang Yu. He's not going to not be a favorite in any game from here on out. So you almost get in that position where as long as he keeps doing what he's supposed to do, the Turtles are down for the count.
Yeah, I mean, of course he's the favorite. He's 26.99, former super grandmaster, still at that elite level of chess, and he's proven his rating. Right, he's won both of his games, essential for his team. Chu Ruotong was probably the highlight of the round, playing with essentially 1 second left, just getting the 2 seconds added to her clock at every move, and she almost survived that one. But unfortunately for her opponent was up to the task and get the full point. So 2.5, 1.5 in both rounds thus far in favor of Chengdu. And I don't know, do you see the Turtles kind of fighting back, and where are they going to get their points from?
Oh, man, it's a tough question. Where are they going to get their points from? Well, I said that the reason I believe it's still close and that they're not out yet and that wasn't a must-win game is because of the Luca factor. Luca Scuola, I mean, he's performed well all year. I see no reason why he won't down the stretch. He's now getting in the territory where these guys are not quite out of his reach. It's not Wang Yue anymore, right? He's going to have some players that are maybe he can handle. And if he can do what he's been doing as an underrated board 4, there's a reason the Turtles have been winning as underdogs, and he's been a big part of it. So I'm putting a lot of eggs in Luca Scuola's basket, but I'm also going to say that there's a reason why they yell scoreboard, right? Panda says best record in the Pacific Division, best record in the league, and we're winning 5-3 for a reason. So Did that make you happy? I got nothing. I don't know. I mean, Pandas are good.
They didn't have the best record in the Pacific Division, I might add. The San Diego Surfers did.
That's
but they
right,
had the
that's
most
right.
board points.
Yes.
So they unfortunately just didn't have the match wins, but they've just crushed the matches that they did play.
The San Diego Surfers were the regular season Pacific Division champions.
But the Chengdu Pandas, of course, they're mighty, they're strong. And now I'm coming to agree with you, and don't be too shocked. I know you're happy about it.
But you know they're filming right now, right? That was caught on camera. You agreed with me. All right, everybody, let's listen.
But a 2-game lead, that's not insurmountable, because when you get into the final match and you've even boards, like you said, if Lucas Scuala can beat his counterpart at the board 4 for Chengdu, Chu Ruotong, then that's 1 game closer. Of course, anyone can win 3-1 in a single round.
Right.
And so if you're down by 2 games, 3-1 can happen and you're in it. However, down 5-3.
Yep. And
we've seen some iffy situations for, let's say, Chu Song-yu for Chengdu. His game in the first round against Yuri Borishek, when Borishek had a great position, just kind of threw away that game.
Yep.
He's survived bad moments.
Yep.
And that, I think, is a great sign of a winner.
Yep.
Because not only do you have to play great chess, but when you're in a tough situation, being able to salvage a half point.
Perseverance is often more important, right? Your ability to keep a cool head when you're not playing your best chess, right? As I believe Super Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura tweeted one time, and I liked it. Form is temporary, class is permanent, right? And, he shows class in those moments, even when he's not playing his best. But you mentioned that a 3-1 score is not impossible in any round, and that might be what the Turtles need to flip things around in this match. And though I'm not sure if we have the graphic ready for you, we will remind you right now what happens on a tie. As in the earlier parts of the playoffs, a tied match automatically moved on the winning team. It was their reward for having a better record throughout the regular season that they had those odds. That will not be the case here in San Francisco for the Pro Chess League Finals. There will be a tiebreaker. So if these matches are tied, we will have a tiebreaker going down. It is a match that will essentially be a ladder to victory, an elimination knockout starting with board 4 versus board 4. Whoever wins gets to play the board 3 of the next team, and so on and so forth. We'll get into the details of that. It's a little more complicated if things get closer. But what we have is an interview right now, and we are going to throw down to Alexander Botez as we speak.
I'm here with Yuri. The Chengdu Pandas so far have a 2-point lead. Yuri, does that change your mindset going into the next rounds?
Well, obviously we have to win at least 2 games. And yeah, I actually feel more relaxed now because I have nothing to defend.
So you're not feeling nervous at all?
No, not at all. I was much more nervous 2 rounds ago.
Is there anything you want to say to the fans who are watching from home?
Yeah, it's still not over. We'll try our best and hopefully we'll achieve something.
Back to you guys.
Well, yeah, as he says, they have to get 2 wins, but he also said he's more relaxed now, right? He's already gotten his blunder out of the way as board 1 for the Turtles. He kind of blew a game that he knows he should have had, but he's playing well overall, and so I think that's the right mindset to have if you're going to complete a comeback.
Yeah, you saw the pain in his face when he put his head in his hands, but he's clearly a chess player, right?
Yep.
Short-term memory is very important. You want to remember all the things you learn in terms of positional strategies and tactics and stuff like that, but your results should be thrown out the window as soon as they happen.
Right.
And he seems to have a good head and shoulders. Again, the team camaraderie thing is essential at this point in the day.
Yep.
When you're 2 games in, you're not pointing fingers. Some teams they lose a game, they're like, Danny, it's your
right,
fault.
They're beating
it's
up.
your fault.
You
we're
blew
losing.
a winning position. You're why we're in the spot. You don't see that with these lifelong friends. They've known each other forever.
Exactly.
It's all support.
If you're 0 out of 2 or 2 out of 2, they're still supporting each other and saying, you're playing this opponent next game. There's maybe their weakness, and here's how to exploit that.
Right. Well, and I think you're absolutely right. It's nice when it's like having a calm coach, right? In a basketball game, you're freaking out. The other team just went on a 10-0 run, and you come back and your coach is like, we're going to win this game,
so
right?
You're looking for Greg Popovich.
Right, exactly. And so, Yuri Borishek, even if inside, he does have some nerves. That's sort of the captain. That's sort of a leader, a top board's responsibility to make sure that he stays calm and collected. And so everybody else believes in the fact that there is still a comeback, because there is. All you have to do is win every chess game you play from here on out, right? No, but I don't even mean that as a joke, right?
Yeah.
Your goal as a chess player is forget the past. You just got to win your next chess game, and it'll be interesting to see. Now Chengdu knows they're in the lead. They know that all they need to do is continue to execute, but the Turtles aren't going to give up.
Yeah, Yuri Borishek in particular has shown good form, and he's shown class on the board. He may have lost that game, but before that moment, he was outplaying a very strong grandmaster with the black pieces.
As black, right.
And so, he's proven that he's up for the task of playing these Chengdu Pandas. And we're going to get back to the game shortly, but for the meantime, we're pulling up some vital information here for how the PCL semifinals and then finals will kind of go underway.
Yep. Here we go. So we can see what the score is at this point. 5-3 in favor of the Pandas, and the players are getting set, I believe, to make their way back. We'll take a moment to just give a shout out to all of you fans here in the chat. We see everybody. Who's throwing out those double exclams? I'm always careful when I announce Twitch usernames because
some of them are not appropriate.
Some of them were not appropriate, and I was caught on camera.
Candid camera, indeed. I got to give a shout out to my friend Regina, who's watching, and just said, "I see you with that Pop reference."
There you go.
So,
he sees you with the Pop reference. That's right. And I don't know that Pop gets all the credit for being the calm coach. I mean, Steve Kerr's pretty calm coach.
Yeah, but it's easier to be calm when you have the team that he has, whereas Popovich, everyone's injured.
Don't be calm. I'm not even a Golden State fan. I'm a Steve
Nor am
Kerr
I.
fan. Okay,
I'm a Knicks fan.
What are you trying to do?
Don't even have
with
a
this?
basketball
You're creating
team.
fights out of nothing, as usual.
But
we're going to talk about this off camera. Chess King T, shout out to Romero Caesar right there. The players are coming back to their boards right now. Robin and I are with all of you. The Pro Chess League finals are really just underway. A lot of fans here on site, and I can actually see some drinks being had and smell some food. That's the problem. Is like they started cooking. Somebody's ordering food. Who ordered pizza?
I don't know, but I got kind of hungry.
No, I started smelling. I need some coffee. They're like, yeah, Danny. The last thing you need is coffee, buddy. But we got something here. There's one of our most awesome staff members. You see that man right there on camera rushing off JD Cannon. He is responsible for all the good things that happen on Chess.com. I'm responsible for all the bugs. He's responsible for all the good things. Shout out to JD helping the magic happen here at the Pro Chess League finals.
Well, I got to give a shout to FNCLL there for Hess and Rensch equals henchman.
Henchman.
Oh.
The henchman.
Oh.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah, the henchman. I also saw somebody combine Robert and Danny into Ronnie, though. Don't get too excited. So Ronnie's pretty bad. Your mom wouldn't like that.
No.
All right, well, the players are sitting down. There is Shu Ratung. She is about to play Mate Sebenik, and so now we have board 3 versus board 4. That, of course, being Sebenik is board 3 for the Turtles.
And there's Anna Rudolph there.
Yep.
Creating disturbances.
Yeah, waving high. She heard a shout out there. That's right, because everything we're talking about, the fans in the crowd can also hear. And I don't, a good thing or not. Maybe some of them brought earplugs, but they can.
I feel bad for Mate Shebenik because he has to listen
right
to
now.
us
He
right
can
now.
hear us. Mate, what's up, man?
Yeah, what's
we
up,
love you,
Mate?
buddy. Give us a wave. Give us a thumbs up. You got this. There you go. I'm just kidding. No, you're good, man.
He
There you
can't
go.
wait.
There you go. And he's gone.
He's so
in his
happy
own
now.
world. He's so happy. He's like, oh my god, that was ridiculous. All right. Well, I'm excited for some chess. Regardless of what the results are for the next few rounds, we are going to be buckled in and analyzing our little hearts out. So
yeah, and there's Yuri. He's going to hear us talk about him now. So he's.
Yep.
I know he's listening to us, but he's tuning us out pretty well.
Yeah, as he should. It's a skill. It's a skill to tune us out.
I have yet to master that one.
Yeah, it's called selective hearing. When you have kids, you'll get it. Yeah, selective hearing. All right. Well, here we go. There we go. That's some serious face right there. That's Nihua and
Luca is also got a really
Captain
serious face.
Luca.
And it looks like the games are just getting underway here with Chu Ruatong playing.
That's right. We are
her
ready.
match.
Chu Ruatong and Mate Sebenik, and no more commentary from us right now. What matters is what's going on the no more ridiculous. Yeah, actually, guys, we're out. Drop mic drops. We're gone. No kidding. Shout out to Puggett, who just subscribed with Twitch Prime. He wants some of those Turtles emotes. He's jealous.
Well,
he knows what the cool kids do.
And this is a really big game for Chu Ruatong in particular because with her team up 5-3 and she's the white pieces.
No, you're right. We talked about the underrated board 4 maybe for the Turtles, but if she takes care of business, talk about a clincher for the Pandas, right?
Right, and she actually performed very well this season. She was 12.5 out of 36 for a performance of 22.79. So her real rating, her live rating, I should say, is much higher than the rating used for this league when we started. So she's been performing well over the board. and over the internet, and here she is in real life playing here at San Francisco, and she's played pretty well.
Yep.
Her last game when she had no time, that's the key, right? You yell at me for this
all
about
the
my
time.
time management.
Yeah.
She needs to
You
play
need
a
to
bit
speed
quicker.
up, by the way. Let's talk about it later. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But right now, we're going to talk about Chu Ruotonga. She's
Yep.
playing pretty quickly right now.
Yep.
Mate Shebenik is not only meeting her pace, but exceeding it.
Yep.
And, okay, I mean, so far, so normal, where
Yep.
Black's put the rook on e8, barreling down the e-file at some point. White can always make a move like knight to d2, with the idea being that if you capture on d5, I'll take with the c-pawn and free up the c4 square for my knight. So something like this is fairly normal. It's a good idea for Black to delay the capture on d5, because then you make White have
you
an
make
extra
White.
option.
You don't want to clarify your opponent's plan, right? Build on the tension, don't break it. You make a great point, though, about the time pressure. It's difficult when you're the lower-rated opponent, because sometimes you have to take more time because you're playing a stronger player and you're trying to keep pace with the X's and O's first and foremost. But
yeah, and here's actually a difficult line, because e takes d5 is a possibility here, and after e takes d5, there comes a time when rook takes e3 is a huge consideration, a known exchange sacrifice thematic where Black just plays queen e7, and the essential point is that you have this dark square bishop that has no counter, right?
Yep.
And so
I was going to highlight fault moves that might follow are things like knight g4 or even bishop h6.
right.
And this is one of those long-term positional exchange sacrifices to make former world champion Tigran Petrosian proud. Right now, this isn't the Armenia Eagles playing just yet, but this is the kind of positional sacrifice that is instructive for all the fans at home, based mainly on the fact that it teaches you to remember that the ability to create threats, squares, and the weaknesses that we can control is ultimately why the pieces are given the values they are. So yes, a rook is worth 5 and a bishop is worth 3, but if your bishop controls a lot more than the counterpart, or even say a rook, that dynamic switches, right? The piece values are more of suggestions, not dogmatic law at times, and that's something that you learn as you become a stronger player, and that's an idea that let's see. Let's hope that it happens here, because we've highlighted it. And who knows, maybe it'll be something we are coming back to, because on that note, the next game we want to highlight is by the board 3 for the Pandas, Zhu Xiangyu versus Luca Scuola. This is the other board 3, board 4 matchup. This is Xu Ruotonga has her work cut out for. So does Luca, playing against a grandmaster. We have a Queen's Gambit / Catalan. Your thoughts on this one?
So we saw queen b3 in another game.
Yeah, the exact same position, actually.
Yeah, and instead,
Was it?
I think white.
I think queen was b3 before knight c3.
And the bishop was on d2, which is an important difference.
Okay.
But the point is that queen on d3 is a little bit more flexible, because you play for e4.
Okay.
And you can play for just b3, and that way you're not blocking the pawn.
Yep.
And from Black's point of view, you can capture on c4 as you can in most lines, and it just sort of transposes. But white generally has a bit of a spatial advantage. The bishop on g2 is on the right diagonal.
Yep.
Black's pieces, at least for the time being, are a little bit stuck in their tracks.
Yep.
And so I would delay that capture if I were Black, because it's not like white is threatening anything so scary to leave that pawn there.
Yeah, and often, again, as you said, the moment you take, you clarify the plan for your opponent, right? It's not exactly the same as a theoretical idea, but often, if you can, you want to build on the tension and leave your opponent guessing as far as what you want to do, right? Do you want to play c6 and play a closed Catalan here? Does Black want to play c5 before capturing? Let the queen guess. Of course, white may prepare e4 anyway and try to force the issue on the d5 square. But the positional idea that Black has by taking here is, even though he's opened up the bishop on the long diagonal, sometimes the knight can come with tempo, or often you play c5 immediately and then hope to gain some tempo as you unwind your pieces because of the fact that this queen is a target in the middle of the board. So if Black takes on c4, we often see an immediate follow-up with a move like c5, right?
Yes. And we just have the third game underway here between Luka Lenic and Ni Hua. So the board 1 for the Ljubljana Turtles is Luka Lenic. He's actually outrated by the board 2 for Chengdu Ni Hua by several points. And that means a pretty close matchup. But with the white pieces, that offsets the rating advantage for sure.
No, but that's what makes China so good, right? Their board 2 is as good as your board 1.
Yeah.
And that's math is, how I feel about math, but unfortunately it exists. So, and numbers are there for a reason. We tell our kids not to focus on the rating, focus on the board, but the rating is sort of the reflector of all the good things you do, and these guys are good.
And we're still very early in this game, but I'm actually taking note of the time advantage for white. You look at that 15 minutes and 8 seconds playing
Very important.
instantly.
I thought you were going to say you're taking note of the opening where you were much worse against Hikaru on the title Tuesday in an almost similar Nimzo.
All right.
You remember that game?
It wasn't that similar because the
No,
pawn
I know,
never went to
I know.
c5, and you're just trying to get on my
yeah,
case.
just, you know what? I love
But you have a fair point.
Yep.
But what I am making note of the time is because look at this, a minute advantage for white, which is not that big a deal in the early stages.
Yep.
But what it does tell me is Luka Lenich is more familiar and more comfortable with the opening.
Yep.
Because now Nihua is saying, I need to remember my
Yep.
my theory.
Yep.
I need to remember what I planned. And here he goes queen a5 check. Note that b4 was impossible because there would have been
Well, Luka's still
sacrifice
just
on b4.
blitzing away there, and you could see him on camera for a moment. He's just playing fast, immediately plays bishop d2, and
And to play queen takes d2 here probably.
Yep.
And the point is that here you can play knight takes d2 as well, but you can enter a slightly better position. So queen takes c5, you take on d5, you have a better pawn structure.
yep,
play
no
e3.
matter what, there's going to be an IQP here, everybody. That's an isolated queen pawn for those who don't speak French, and that's a weakness for the rest of the game on the open file. So, no, I agree, and I think that knight takes is also possible, though, because if queen takes c5, you have
A b4,
a
yeah.
b4, right, to consider. And, okay, the question is we have a tempo, we have the rook sliding over. In this case, what you're saying is, yes, black has the opportunity to not be strapped with the isolated pawn, but if you go for it, you've got new problems
Yeah,
and
you're-
all kinds of issues. So I agree, and
did take with a knight.
Luka is better here as white, but more importantly, seems to be confident in what he's doing, and sometimes in rapid, having a plan you feel confident about is more important than whether it's a brilliant one.
Yeah, and he's going to look to make use of his white pieces here because, I mean, that's really, he needs it, right? Because if he's going to get black against Wang Yue in the
Yep.
final round,
Yep.
he needs to make use of his the white piece against Nihua.
Yep.
And it seems like, he's doing his part. He's moving quickly, confidently. He's up over a minute on the clock. And I really think Nihua has his work cut out from him. He went e3 here, maybe just to stop any sort of piece to d4 ideas.
Yeah, I liked b4 and rook d1, the line we looked at. So he didn't like. What did he not like? Was it knight d4 or queen d4?
No, knight d4, just you move the queen to d3, and all of a sudden,
Right, and now
or c3
black
even.
is overwhelmed.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is not good.
So what was it he didn't like about b4 to make him play e3? Because now he's not. Now he's letting black avoid that isolated pawn, but without that tempo on the file we talked about.
I'll go b4 anyway. But I think he's trying to use a little bit of space advantage. So a castle, he can always castle. He can then go b4, bishop d3 to put some pressure on the king side. Play moves like knight to e4, and all the positional pluses favor white here.
Yeah.
The queen on c5 looks like it's a decent piece, but it's actually kind of misplaced because it allows white to just kick it very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I feel that the chances of winning, sometimes you need a little more dynamic opportunities than just some tempi. And here, if you look at the pawn structure, everybody, we have a completely symmetrical structure on the king side. I'm not even going to highlight all of them. You can see 4 on 4. And we almost have exact symmetry on the queen side. And so there's just not a lot of targets. There's not a lot of imbalances. The only real edge white has right now is a small lead development, the bishop on c8, and the fact that white can play before this thing we've been highlighting. And so the initiative can be used to build into something more concrete long term in any chess game. But I don't know. I guess I feel that I'm always looking for an isolated pawn or something to make me feel like white really got the best of the opening.
Right.
So we'll see.
And, it's one of those positions that a lot of players struggle with because
Yeah.
slight advantages can be nagging forever rather than a dynamic advantage. So,
Yep.
and we have the fourth game underway as well.
Yep,
just for the record.
absolutely. Let's swing to it. We have another Petrov defense here. Let's actually show the opening here. We talked a little bit about this idea earlier, Robert. You said this move knight c3 that lets black capture and just double the pawns is a good idea. White has a whole bunch of pawns on the queen side, which make the king safe, and you get the early and active development. We saw this exact line played against Shu Ruotong earlier. And now we're seeing another turtle go for it. The same turtle. Actually, is it the same turtle?
Yeah.
It was Borishek, right? Same line.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Interesting. Rinse and repeat. Avoid dandruff.
yeah, so here Borshek with the white piece is going for the same. I mean, this is the same exact position.
Yeah, this is the exact same line. That's why I was like, it's interesting. Sometimes I pause before I think,
Yeah.
or before I say things.
Well, sometimes, rarely. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll get back to this. We were discussing this in the last round. Essentially, that if black castles kingside, sometimes there can be you're definitely not castling kingside now when you play the move h5, which is to stop the move g4 to limit white space. But when you play a move like h5, you sort of give control over to the g5 square.
Yep.
So white now can consider playing knight g5 to secure the 2 bishops. You can also consider playing bishop g5 instead if you want that square for your knight. But
this will be a little bit different, right? This is Yuri Borishek playing the same type of idea against a slightly higher rated opponent, only by about 700 points. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see if Yuri was in control of the last game, right? And really held on from start to finish. So we'll see if he can maintain it here. Shout out to Chess Gamertag, who just gifted a sub in chat to Team Botez there, spreading the emote love. And if anybody else has subbed or gift that I miss, I just apologize in advance. I'm only one man with about 72 desires, so. All right. All right, well, we'll come back to this. H5 is played. It's interesting. Let's go back to the game we started with. That is between, or not the game we started with. We started with Mate Shebenik versus Xu Ruotong. Okay, so the transition of taking on d5 did happen, Robert, but we did not see the sacrifice on e3 that existed, right? Maybe Mate feeling he's the higher-rated opponent, despite all the highlights we pointed out, or all the potential advantages of a dynamic exchange sacrifice on the dark squares. It is material, so he decided maybe I'm not going to go for that just yet. Plays bishop g4. She defends that idea. You would never sack the exchange if it didn't ruin the pawn structure, everybody. The queen just takes back. But now we have more of a typical kind of Benoni approach for black, where black has less space, but he's going to use the limited space he has wisely. He's going to try to use the e5 square to hit c4. He might look for a shot like b5 to either sacrifice or just create some immediate tactical chances on the queen side. And I actually like black's version of this Benoni, right? Because normally white has the knight on f3, kind of controlling this. This bishop on f3 is sort of a weird piece. That exchange looks like it favored black. Robert, am I missing something here, or am I right to say this feels like black is getting the better of this Benoni structure?
Yeah, I mean, what's frustrating of these positions from white's perspective is you feel like you should be better. You have the 2 bishops, you can like have different opportunities to gain space, but there's no real like knockout punch anywhere in the cards, right? Just not happening.
Right.
And with this exchange of bishops, what you could see happen eventually is a bad light square bishop against a good knight, and that would be a huge problem. And the move bishop h6, definitely tempting. You could also consider bishop to f4 instead to keep the bishop on the board and just come for the d6 pawn. But then black has options like queen c7, just simply defending. But here, black does not want to take on h6. Like taking on h6, inviting the queen into the game is a bit of a risky decision. So
but the problem is that he also doesn't have to, right? He can
exactly.
Play chicken or blink staring contest. Just sit tight, and knight e5 is a move you'd consider here. b5, does it work tactically? It doesn't work tactically because d6 falls at the end, but my idea, everybody, is if black could aggressively blow things open, there's something like this at the end, but likely ill-advised at this point. But keep an eye on this b5 shot as we return to this game. Let's check back in with the game between Luka Lenic and Ni Hua. Still a small edge for white based on the development lead, as you highlighted. Not a ton has changed here.
What an interesting decision, because you look at the last move, bishop to e4, right? And white could have went bishop h7 check first and then put the bishop back to e4. So just a move ago had that option. And instead played bishop e4. So saying maybe the king, for some reason, it's smarter to leave that on g8 and not allow the king to the corner. But here, bishop b7, it looks like black is doing all right, because the knight can go to b3 to c5, but black will always go rook c8 and put a rook on that file and kick this knight from c5 if it ever gets there. So I'm not really seeing much, honestly. It's a slight advantage, just because of the more space, but black is very solid indeed.
Yeah, well, and it's as I said, there's no dynamic imbalances here. A completely symmetrical structure, 4-on-4, 2-on-2. So whatever builds into a concrete or long-term advantage for either player is going to have to come with the initiative first, using the pressure you have, look for some opportunities on the open file maybe, and if you can get a bind by getting access to those points first, you might. But otherwise, this is a very equal game, and I think from the match strategy perspective, as we can see the scoreboard right there above the 4 games, a draw for Ni Hua, even though he hasn't drawn yet, he's won his games, is probably a good result here for the Pandas.
Oh, absolutely, and he's trying to go by that top player mantra, win with white, draw with black.
And he did draw with black. That's right, he drew earlier.
Exactly, he drew Mate Shebenik with the black pieces quite quickly, honestly, and so if he can hold this one, that would be big.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next one here. We haven't quite looked at yet since the king side opened up. And if you are just tuning in to the Pro Chess League Finals, thank you for being here. We are going to be here for the rest of the day, covering the biggest championship in chess so far this year. I'm not going to go as far as to claim this is bigger than the November World Championship yet, but no. But it's been a lot of hard work over the last few months for all these teams to get here. And round one of the semifinals, we have the Pandas facing off against the Turtles. Probably in about an hour and a half from now will be the Bishops facing off against the Eagles. So we also have a Super Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura in the house. He's been here. He will be joining us at some point in the day here for commentary, maybe more than once. I saw him playing Blitz actually here on site in the Chess.com free play area, playing with a mouse pad. That's pretty cool. But we also have an interview lined up right now. We have women's FIDE master Alexandra Botez standing by with one of the players, and we're going to go to her right now.
I'm here with the one and only GM Hikaru Nakamura, one of the top chess players in the world. Hikaru, what do you think of the venue so far?
It's a great venue. It's great to see there are so many people here following the Pro Chess League, and I think it's quite unique relative to a lot of the normal setups. So certainly a very encouraging sign. It's great to see everyone's out today watching this really closely contested match.
What are your thoughts on the Panda Turtle matchup so far?
I mean, I think it's probably going to end up turning into a blowout, considering that the Pandas are already up 2 points. But that being said, I think really a lot hinged on the first round. I think if the game between Borisek and I think I forget who the Chinese player was, but he probably should have won that game. I think when he lost that game, that basically turned into a 2-point swing, and in the second match, the Pandas were just a little bit better. So I think it's going to be very hard for the Turtles to come back. But again, anything can happen. I think they're going to need some upsets, though, in order to come back. But I think it's probably like, I'd say 80-85% that the Pandas will win at this point.
What do you think of the games in the current match right now?
Well, just looking at the positions, it looks like, I mean, I think the main thing is the Pandas are ahead. So even if the positions look relatively balanced, that's going to certainly favor them because I think, I mean, I can't tell, but the board 3, it looks like, it looks like Nihua is already winning his game, and the other positions look pretty balanced. So, I mean, I think if there isn't some kind of upset in this round, the Pandas are almost certainly going to win. So hopefully for the Turtles, they can come up with some magic in this third round matchup.
A lot of people viewing right now are also big fans of you. Are you going to be playing again in the next Pro Chess League?
I'm not sure yet. I've played the last 2 years after a long hiatus, so I think certainly it's possible. If I do, I mean, I think almost certainly I'll be playing for the Seattle team as this past year. But again, it's quite a ways off, so we'll see.
If you had to be part of one of the top 4 teams right now, which one would you pick?
Well, definitely not St. Louis. The Armenia team is fun, but I mean, probably out of all these teams, I think certainly on paper, the Ljubljana Turtles are the weakest. So probably if I had to root for one of them or even play for one of them, that would be the one that I would pick.
So you're rooting for them right now?
I mean, I was rooting for them before the match started. Again, I mean, you have to be realistic, but certainly I hope they can make it interesting, at least going into the final round. Back
to you, Robert and Danny.
Well, that was an enlightening interview, wasn't it?
That's the one and only Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura. He is, I think it's fair to say maybe the best interview in chess, one of the best. He's right there.
He's never afraid to speak his mind.
St. Louis fans crying as Hikaru honest that he wouldn't want to be a part of their team, at least not right now this year. But that was great actually to have Hikaru join us and give his thoughts on the games. And he's right? I mean, you've got your work cut out for you right now. This is heading the direction that may end up being a blowout for the Pandas if the Turtles can't come up with something.
Yeah, and in this particular game that we have on screen here between Yuri Borisek and Wang Yue, this should likely be a draw. White is slightly better, opposite color bishops. And the reason why white is better is look at the pawn structure. Black has disconnected pawns on the king side, whereas white can just sit this bishop on e4, where it's very pretty, and defends f3 and can attack the queen side pawn. So I think that white is slightly better here, but should be a relatively simple draw for Wang Yue.
Yeah. Well, he said that Nihua looked to already be winning his game, and I didn't realize that might be the case. But he likes black in this position, and I don't disagree that black has done just fine out of the opening here. You've got the c file, you've got the knight here, holding back white's queen side, and you've got these pawns stuck on light squares, which are probably easier to target for black.
Yeah, I think he was talking about a different game, Danny, between Xu Xiangyu and Luca Scuala, because that game is the one where it's clear that the Chengdu player is in business. And if you see the position right now, white is up in exchange, right? A rook for a knight. And black certainly has counterplay in the sense that white's pawns are weak, but I believe this is the game that Hikaru meant to point out.
Well, it would also be a huge issue for the Turtles. Every game at this point matters, but Luca Scuala has performed so well this year, especially when he got the players that were a little closer to him. But this is not a board 3, board 4 matchup that is easy for Luca. Not that any of them were, but this one is one where he's still really down, right? Really under the gun, and that's going to be tough for him now because Xu Xiangyu is he seems to be finding his form a little bit. That's scary news for opponents of the Pandas, right? Because he hasn't had the best playoffs, but if he starts playing as well as he did all season, it's going to be really hard to slow down the China team.
Absolutely. And this position in particular, I believe, is one that actually is not so easy. And the reason why is, you have a rook for a knight, but there aren't open files to use.
Okay.
And that becomes a bit problematic. If you take this knight on d5, you get into a situation where your king side's a little bit iffy because the light squares on that side of the board are open and exposed. And so if you don't take that knight may find itself hopping into the action a bit more. So I would play a move maybe like bishop to d2 and just sort of saying you're not bringing your knight to b4 to annoy me, and I'll figure out the rest later. I mean, of course, you can take on d5 and still be better, but it is a very committal decision.
Well, again, probably another issue just to point out on the clock is that Luca is down on time once again, right? And that's been a hard thing for Luca as he's played such a strong field today to not only stay level on the board, but not get himself under too much time pressure too fast. Now, to be fair, Xu Ruochang has also struggled with the same thing, and she's once again down on the clock against Mate Shebenik. But
many moves have been made here, but I don't think the moves have actually favored her, because if you look at black's position, it's exactly what you were talking about. Very nice control over the board. Already there are things like knight takes c3 we have to calculate because the bishop on e2 is hanging, but a lot of black pawns are hanging in response on d6 and b7. But remember we were talking about good knight versus not great light square bishop?
Yep.
This is what I think we're going to see happen, because if you look at that bishop, it's a defensive piece protecting the pawn on c4, whereas the knight can hop around once a knight trade happens.
Yeah, so, even if there was no win of material, if something like this happened, and just make a random move to use our imagination, everybody, if you get a good knight on any one of these dark squares versus such a Frankenstein of a pawn there, and so because of that, but because he would like to take on c3, Shebenik has just backed up the queen, and Xu Ruochang immediately plays bishop f3 because there was officially a threat to take on c3 and win the bishop now that there was no tempo on the queen. So, okay. Well,
it's a good decision, honestly.
That was actually a really good decision because probably Shebenik is going to take here, and I'm going to guess queen c7, right? Okay, yeah. So he takes and plays queen c7 to make sure that he can guard both d6 and b7. And going along the path that we anticipated, black is better positionally. These pawns are doubled, and the black knight will probably remaneuver itself to a strong square. But Xu's not. This is not a losing position for white at this point.
Oh, by no means losing. And one thing that black wishes that he could do is Shebenik wishes that pawn could go back to a7.
Yep.
So he could play b6 and have like a formidable queenside pawn structure.
Yep.
Now the problem is rook b3 can come, then rook to b1. You always have to defend that side of the board.
That's a really key point right there, because that counterplay is kind of what holds white's chances here together.
Exactly. And if I'm black, I would consider playing rook to e5. Then maybe even going g5, g4.
Now that would be some fun right there, right?
Expanding on the king side makes perfect sense because white's not too happy to meet action on that side of the board. So, we'll see as this game continues. We'll see what happens here. The other games are looking fairly solid. We'll just go over to the Wang Yue game very quickly because it might be one of the last times we see it. Opposite color bishops. I think white will play this out for a while. Well, actually, you need to be careful not to get checkmated.
Yeah, the dark squares are 99 of my problems. Rook e4 is a move that prevents e4, but if black just wants a draw, Wang Yue can play rook d4. At this point, from a match strategy perspective, I think he's deciding he's not in a position that he even needs to go for that. In fact, we talked about how white was maybe a little better because of the nice healthy pawns and a good bishop, but that hasn't really happened here, right? I mean, black is doing just fine. This rook could either offer a trade or go to any other square, rook e1, rook d2, and at some point this bishop will sink itself on f4. Most likely result is just a draw, which is probably still good news for the Pandas. But
well, it will be good news, especially if we go to the game between Luca Squala with the black pieces against Xu Xiongyu, because that game, we saw an extra exchange for the Chengdu player for a while. And the problem is, rook, instead queen c7 is a good move. Rook takes a4 would have been a blunder. And rook takes a4 looks like you're getting that back rank checkmate that we all desire after queen c8 check. But the problem is the queen actually drops back to e8 first and saves the day, in which case black will be the one who's better if anyone is. But instead he went queen c7, which is a very good move, forcing the queens off the board, because you can't keep your queen protecting the bishop on a4 and the rook on b8, which is now under attack. Yeah,
that's an overloaded queen, and as you said, there are some back rank problems here. Okay.
Rook takes a4.
Did we just catch a blunder on camera? Rook takes a4 and resigns. OMG, everybody.
And that's
poor Luca. We were following the game. We saw it coming. In a rare, potentially clippable moment, my timing actually worked. Let's clip that thing right there. That's a tough loss there for Luca, but a nice finish there for Xu Xiongyu, and he's finding his form. It's scary news right now. The Pandas are getting better as it goes on, and again, everybody, the tactic very simple. The queen is overloaded, can't take the rook without allowing queen takes b8, and Bob's your uncle. So, all right, back to Xu Ruotong's game. She's under a minute, positionally worse. Tell everybody why maybe she has a chance here, or not.
She might have a chance just because the B pawn, I say the B side, the pawn on b7 in particular can become a target. If you're black here, you have to figure out how exactly to make progress. Because queen b2 is a legitimate threat. Queen b2 coming for that b7 pawn. And if I'm black, I would consider making the queen to e7. The idea being that I can always try to trade on e1 if I need be. I don't have to even do it right away. Because if you take on b7, then I can go rook e1 check, which might be very annoying. But then I play g5, I play h4 or g4, depending on the circumstance. And I think that black just slowly maneuvers and makes progress,
and
especially
he
if
likes
it's in the clock situation.
He likes your idea. He goes for queen e7, and again,
perfect move.
You immediately start thinking that g5 and g4 may be the next things on the agenda for black. And it's tough to hold this bishop in this case, such low esteem. The bishop is just not serving a lot of purpose besides staring at the rear view of these pawns. And you may even want to see g3, as much as that's a dangerous move to weaken your king side. What are you doing against the coming idea of g5 and g4? Very scary. Maybe you can even commit king f1?
And look at the clock situation, 17 seconds and counting down. And we have an image here of Mate Shebenik, who should be very confident in his game.
He's leaning in. That's the confident prowl of a guy on
the turtle. You see the head
turtle.
The head popping out.
There he is. He's just missing
King
his
f1 played, so that's a good move. But the problem is now, let's say white can make two moves in a row. Queen b2 takes b7. You can't actually do that because rook e1 check still comes in as a tactic.
Just to show the tactic, everybody, there's something like queen b2, knight g5, queen b7. Not so fast. Rook e1 overwhelms the rook, and you will lose the first lady. So, this is just—it's getting really hard. And here she is. She's under time pressure. Okay, just in time. 1.1 seconds.
So rook f5 here should be good. The idea is just then take on g3.
G5 is also pretty good.
Yeah, everything is good here. Now you have to take with the queen. Look at the shattered pawn structure. So
knight g5, rook g5, rook f5. Pick your flav.
Oh, yeah, rook g5 is protected there. I was going to say rook takes b7 to distract the queen, but the knight on h7 protects that rook. So,
okay.
Queen f6.
She does well with no time on the clock, right? And
this is over.
The problem is whether you're not losing on time yet. It's a piece.
Yeah, that's a piece.
And a piece is a piece, and we assume as soon as Shebenik takes it.
Yeah, she looks a bit deflated over here, but she should keep her head up because her counterpart, board 4 for the Turtles, is also 0 at 3.
Struggling, right? And unless the Turtles go on a 4-0 tear in the last round at this point, I mean, the Pandas may just remain in control. So,
and she needs to keep her composure here because, as we're noting, 0 out of 3, you're playing 3 very strong grandmasters. Luca Scuala's suffering the same fate. So, that's a very important matchup, right?
Yep.
Because GMs, anything can happen. And, of course, between 2 relatively equal players, anything can happen on that final board. So we have the game between Nihua and Luka Lenic, which we haven't checked out in a while. But what happened here is that we saw earlier that black had the double F pawns, which is not the end of the world, especially in endgame. But as the rooks get traded off, look at this knight on A5. Okay, it can go to B3, so it can get back into the game. But how much is it really doing? Whereas from White's perspective, I mean, you don't have that much going on, but maybe, just maybe, you can get a knight over to the king side. Excuse me. If that knight could get somehow to G8, it would be in great shape. But how to get there is the real question.
Well, to be clear too, though, but you have to be very careful, right? You don't want to put the knight on the wrong square because then you might run into some serious tactics with knight b3 check, and that king is overloaded, trying not to get mated and defend the rook over here. So to show a quick line of something like that, if black sits tight and white makes a blunder, look for a move like knight b3 check and e4 with
checkmate.
Well, I was waiting for you to drop the bomb on that one. So yeah, so that's something to be careful about. Nihua is sitting confidently, kind of staring down the tension because white has to be really careful here. I kind of like the move f6. I'm anticipating him to just play a solid kind of sit and wait move, a high class waiting move. But we'll keep our eye on this one. What's going on in the game between Wang Yue and Yuri Borashek? Not a lot has changed. A game that is going to be a draw, I'm guessing, short of a blunder.
Yeah, and actually now it's white. Borashek has to be careful because the rook on e4 and bishop on e2 are not very well placed.
Yep.
In fact, the rook on e4 currently has 0 moves.
Yep.
And so look at this. The king go to a5 now. King b6 to a5.
Oh.
Yeah, and once that king gets to a5, how are you protecting the pawn on a4? So I think that
this is the problem with playing Wang Yue.
the bishop. Okay, but the bishop comes to c2. You just go rook back to
now
f1.
now the pawn on f3 is hanging, right? This bishop, everybody is choosing between weaknesses to guard. Is he going to guard f3 or is he going to guard
rook
a4?
e2, great move. So now king a5,
Perfect.
rook a2. Trade the rooks. If you trade the rooks,
and the
you'll
bishop
never
can
lose.
find itself on either e4 or d5 where it defends everybody.
Yeah, if you trade the rooks, you can never lose this game. So rook a2 here. Okay. Rook a2 will come next after rook takes a4.
Yeah, and that's probably the sort of the bluff that Borashek is calling out. That all right, you've outplayed me. You're really good at chess. You're 2,700, but even with that, I'm not going to lose this endgame even if I'm down a pawn because when the rooks are traded, everybody sits tight, and it's a draw. Yeah. And again, the reason is put this pawn wherever you want, put the bishop wherever you want. We have light squares or we have waiting moves with the bishop, and black just has no way to make progress. So, okay. Wang Yue may continue to poke and prod at this for a little longer, but really, if there's going to be any game that goes in favor of the Turtles, it would be Luka Lenic finding a miracle here, but I think Nihua is doing just fine.
Yeah, I mean, Luka Lenic, he needs a lot of luck to get this one because Nihua is well positioned to defend everything.
Yep.
There's no real action going there on the queen side, and move f4 was played. And what's interesting about this move f4 is that you've given yourself double isolated f-pawns.
Yeah.
But there's no way for white to attack that with the knight on c5. Look at your knight on e1. It's not exactly the greatest piece in the world. And, okay, a5 is, you're not throwing anything. Just if we trade on b6, we trade on b6. There's no complaints there.
Hashtag NBD.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Italian for I don't care.
And look at Lenic here. He doesn't look happy.
He's frustrated. I mean, obviously, he wants his team to win, and he's knocking on every door he can, hoping for a weakness, but nobody's opening up.
Door?
He might be knocking on heaven's door pretty soon, right, if you're the Turtles, because he's putting pressure here. He may try to wiggle the knight around, as you said. There are some doubled f-pawns here, but it's hard to get an approach over there. Plus, he's only got 20 seconds left, so we'll have to keep our eye on Luka as he gets under time pressure. Shout out to the legendary Hikaru Nakamura once again, just playing chess here on site somewhere at those in the Chess.com free play area, probably on a trackpad. It's hard for Hikaru to sit here and watch our commentary over chess players, right? He's got to get in on the action. Gotta play.
Of course. You got to scratch that itch. And there he is playing chess. And here between Nihua and Luka Lenic, I expect this game to fizzle out at any moment.
Yeah, a little tick. Oh, Luka playing. He's trying to invite.
King d4 and then knight d3.
Knight d3 hits the pawn for sure, but.
Then there's knight c3. Actually, that's still quite decent for black. So actually maybe
but
not.
he's trying to invite something dynamic, right? He doesn't want the draw. Just as the team captain and manager, he's he doesn't want to just sit tight, but he's probably just doesn't have a choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, something weird happened here.
Yeah. Somehow white got active. Okay. So the king is on a4.
But here comes bishop d5.
So bishop d5 is a good move.
I assume Borishek plays. Oh, he doesn't. But bishop d5 would have cut out the rook.
He's going rook c6. He's just going to try to.
Okay, he's just going to draw.
Yeah, he wants to make a draw here with rook c6, attacking the rook and the pawn a6. So here, black goes a5. Now, all of a sudden, you need to be worried about checkmating yourself.
Yeah, you got to be careful because the king on the edge is running out of squares.
Uh-oh.
Nice move there, sort of laughing in the face of danger. There is no useful discovered check. Put the king on a square where next you can still play bishop d5, maybe still try to come over here.
Yeah, and you cannot go rook c6 now. That would be a very bad move.
That would be a very bad move.
Because you trade on c6 and your king goes to b3, and all of a sudden the a pawn just rushes down the board. So don't blunder.
Don't blunder is a good tip. That's good advice from Coach Robert.
Yeah, so if you're black, maybe you start with rook b6 here.
Yeah, I like that. Invite rook c6 as a blunder.
Yeah.
Yeah, play rook b6.
And that's a great square because you have rook b3 check and things like that. So, yeah, take on c6 and then play king b3. And all of a sudden that a-pawn is rolling down the board.
Yep. Yeah, here it would come, king b3.
Yeah, just there it goes. And that would be really, really unfortunate.
That would be a heartbreaker for sure. But if Borishek doesn't blunder that, the position is still...
So a5 was played. So now I would go rook back to b8. And the idea behind rook b8 is to cut that king off. Eventually, put my bishop on d5 if I need to. And it's not like black is making any real progress. Maybe black will try to go king a3, pawn a4, and just keep bringing the king and the pawn together. But it's not looking like it... well, maybe I'm saying
I'm looking at it's a little...
It's pretty annoying.
It's a little weird, but crazy idea. Okay, he goes for your idea. I was wondering if bishop to c6 was an idea. And, okay, if here I was going to then I go rook b8 and move my bishop.
Yeah.
My point is I wanted to open up this idea.
Yeah, I think that's what he's going to
look at that, right? That's a tickle of the g-pawn, and something may happen over there on the old g file.
Yeah, well... we'll see if that actually is going to come to fruition in this game, but don't you laugh at me next to me here.
I'll laugh at you all I want. All right, bishop d5.
You still might go for it, but the problem is, right, if you go king e4, as it's played, now bishop c3 to b4. I can maneuver my bishop to
here
block.
we go. But this...
Oh, but then the e5 pawn's also hanging.
Yeah, if you move the bishop off e5.
Ooh,
okay,
like
so
that
that's just in time. Nick of time to stop this king from entering... White should still be...
It's just rook b5 here. The thing is, or king d3 back. What I was going to say is, black's piece is also quite tied down. Like, you need to maneuver your bishop around to b4 or something like that, but I always just, I can put my rook on b5 and keep your bishop tied to the c-pawn.
Well, as exciting as this has become, given that it's been probably the most boring game of the round, we'll keep our eye on it, but one that's even closer to having a finish over here is Luka Lenich and Nihua, because both sides are under 30 seconds. Black still has the much more active king, and the only real target on b5, sitting on the same color square as your bishop, allows you to double up. But probably with best play, this would be a draw. Unfortunately, without a lot of time on the clock, sometimes you don't always play the best. So we'll see if we catch somebody.
Yeah, this is awkward already because he took on b6, and now if you take on b5 as in play, you can just take and go king d3. And in fact, this endgame now is better for what? Ooh,
yeah, that was a nice transition for Luka, actually.
Okay, he's trying to bring his knight to d3, but now knight
still not really one that I expect him to win, but he's got some chances now with threats against the f-pawn.
The problem is knights can't lose tempi, right? You would like to just pass the move to black here.
Yeah.
But now there's this check, so you're sort of
repeating. Yeah, you just want to say pass here, but Zugzwang doesn't exist with the knights, and now he's actually just given a draw. Yeah. The perpetual will ensue. Even king c2
knight a3
would allow knight a3. So we are going to see a draw, but still a very exciting and hard-fought effort there. A successful result for Nihua, especially given that Wang Yue did somehow find a way to win that game. What happened over here as we were looking at the other game?
Wow, the rook got in.
So the rook went from the F-file all the way around. He just pulled a Frodo. The journey to Mordor took place, and he's got everything he needs to queen the A-pawn. an absolute heartbreaker there for Yuri Borishek. In hindsight, looking at the way this one went down, with White giving up the 8 pawn, but still having lots of drawing chances, really allowed more winning chances than we realized. One of the key factors was something you inadvertently foreshadowed earlier, buddy, which was that after the check, or the fact that the rook trade wasn't possible, right? The fact that suddenly Borishek was unable to go into the easiest drawn ending if your king was on a2.
Yes.
Light square bishop just blockading on the light square is not possible anymore because the king will go to b3, shoulder the enemy, and rush the a-pawn. That really changed the dynamic of this endgame, made it a lot harder for White.
Yeah, just excellent technique by Wang Yue, because as a 2700 player, he's used to these moments. He's used to these kind of milking out a win and of a small advantage.
Yeah.
And he had a better position because his king got very active.
Yep.
He got his king out to the side of the board, which we predicted, with king c7 to a5, and from there he was able to win one pawn, and sometimes one pawn is enough.
Yeah, no, that was excellent technique. I feel like the tone of the match, as much as it has been, the match has been heading in the direction of favoring the Pandas. That was a real hammer that just got brought down. Not to inadvertently give a shout out to Jon Ludwig Hammer, who's here live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Flew all the way from Norway to be here for the PCL finals. And who knows, maybe we'll see his gnomes here next year. But the hammer was brought down on that one, and it really puts the Pandas in charge. So we're going to go right now to a player from their team, Xu Ruotong, who has been holding down the fort on board 4, and will have a big matchup ahead of her against Luca Scuola in the last round.
I'm here with Xu Ruotong. 你的比赛容易不容易？
不容易。
今天你们的团队有一个很好的意志，你高兴不高兴？
高兴。
很高兴。
很高兴。
如果你的团队赢了这个比赛，你们去排队吗？
排队。
排队。Party celebrate。
应该要小小的开一下吧。
谢谢。Back to you, Danny and Hess.
Ni hao Kai Lan. That was about where I went with that. I got nothing. That was great. And women's FIDE master Alexandra Botez, we know she's talented. Those of you who follow her on Twitch and her chess commentary and streams know that. But now we also know that she speaks Mandarin, and that was a very useful and hopefully enlightening interview for everyone who speaks Mandarin.
Yeah, you always make fun of people going to college and they don't learn things. She clearly picked up some good Mandarin along the way. But Xu Ruotong, she has been playing actually quite well, I would say. Of course, at critical moments, she's being outplayed just by higher rated and stronger players.
Yep.
But like you said, it's, round 4, she's playing her board 4 counterpart, equal in rating, an even matchup, and her team's ahead.
Yep.
So she can probably breathe a sigh of relief, saying we're up 7.5, 4.5. We just need one full point.
Even a draw,
and that's
for her.
And
right?
the good thing is, if let's say she loses and her team wins, she has tomorrow's championship game to figure out when to score some points. So she can save it up for another day.
Yep.
And Wang Yue, the way he's been playing, I don't know if anybody's stopping him.
Yeah, Wang Yue right now is really earning his stripes and leading the Pandas as they are taking a three-game lead?
Yeah, 3-game.
Into the final round. Round 4 will be underway here momentarily. It will take the comeback of epic nature for the Turtles. Slow and steady wins the race. They might have to put on some running shoes and see if they can figure it out here in the next 5-10 minutes. But again, if you're just joining us, we have the first semifinals of the Pro Chess League Championship underway. Right now, the Pandas are in the lead. Right after this match, after a small break, we will be having the next semifinal between the St. Louis Archbishops and the Armenia Eagles. So we have a long day ahead of us, lots of chess. The round 4 pairings are they will decide everything, although at this point the Pandas are in control. As you can see here, they are up 3 games, as we've already mentioned. But round 4 always pairs off the top board for each team, or at least it's not just the top boards. It's every player is as closely rated to their opponent as they are at any other point in the match. So you see Wang Yue, still the heavy favorite there on board 1, but Luka Lenich is as close to him as any of the Turtles, and all the way down that list down to Luca Scuola. And okay, if the Turtles are going to complete the comeback that their fans in chat spamming their Turtle emotes all day are going to want, it's going to have to be a sweep. It's going to have to be a 3.5 half score to go into a tiebreaker, Robert, or a 4-0 sweep.
And it looks like Yuri Borishek is the face of the franchise because he's the only photo I see up here.
Yeah.
But, he's been playing quite well, and it's unfortunate for him to face Wang Yue, who's just a determined panda. When a panda gets determined, they're getting what they want.
Apparently
right?
they get what they want. Who would win in a panda fight versus a Ninja Turtle?
Well, that's a good question. I thought you were just going to say a turtle. I thought you were making a light of the situation.
That's called improving as you go. Yeah,
but no, in all seriousness, though, between the board 4 matchup, that's essential. But I really think that with Wang Yu and board 1, he might just win it himself. He might say, I'm going to guess the full point we need to get over the 8 point
Hop
threshold.
on my back. I'll climb this tree that seems ridiculous that it can hold my weight. I'm a panda bear, and here I go.
No, for sure.
They climb trees,
And, he's been the hero for sure with 3 out of 3 thus far, but don't count out Chu Xiang-su, who's been having a great day with 2.5 out of 3.
Yeah, it's so funny because he started out really under fire against Yuri Borishek, as you said, the face of the franchise. That's the only picture we see there. But lucky we can see all the players on camera during the games. And, since then, he's really found his feet and played, I think, his best game I've seen in the playoffs so far last round.
Yeah, and Dan, I have a question for you. Since you're used to losing, what would you say to the players on board 4 who might be struggling this far in the Pro Chess League semis?
You know what? I would say you always have a career in commentary. All jokes aside, you always have to control your emotions as a chess player. Something that I think I struggled with, and in my best days, it was something that I was doing well with, focusing on the next game and not playing against your own ghost. But I think these guys know that in their position as a board 4 for our team in the Pro Chess League, you're playing a lot of really good chess players, right? So you can't think about that. You know you're going to lose some games. Your job is to take care of business when you have people that are within your striking distance. And now they're going to have a matchup where it's a 50-50 chance there, I think, between Chu Rutong and, of course, Lucas Guala. So I would say do your best, forget the rest. Or is that P90? I don't remember. Something. I would say just focus on your next moment. What would Master Shifu say?
I always say Master Splinter.
I was going to say Master Shifu. He would say, the yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, today's a gift. So that's why they call it the present.
Yeah, that was incredibly, incredibly cliche and lame. So I don't even know what to say to you right now. But what I do have to say is that right now, with the Chengdu Pandas up 7.5, 4.5, I'm sorry to the Turtles. I mean, they're getting knocked out here. They're not going to be in the finals. There's no way they can come back.
Are you challenging them?
I'm challenging them.
I'm
challenging them. I want to see them, wake up and put up a good fight here. They've been trying their best, but losing all these matches, 2.5, 1.5. I mean,
it's been each round, 2.5, 1.5 every round.
Where are they getting their points?
Right.
That's the thing is Wang Yue just seems unbeatable at this point. Nihua has been solid as solid comes. He drew with games of black, won his game with white.
Right.
How are you going to get 3.5 out of 4? You haven't got over 1.5.
You have to use your imagination, Robert. Use your imagination.
My imagination's running into a brick wall.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Either way, we're going to find out what the Turtles have in store in the last round and see if they can mount a comeback. It starts and ends, as all things do for the Turtles, with Luka squared. You got Luka Lenic on board 1, Lucas Guala on board 4. If those two find a way to get it done despite facing the brick wall of China that is Wang Yue, if they can find a way to get it done, then maybe there's a chance. But either way, we're going to be entertaining all of you. Thanks to everybody who's been here with us the entire time. We are live from the Pro Chess League Finals in San Francisco. This is the first matchup of the semifinals. The winner of this will be playing in the finals tomorrow in the afternoon match. But if you're wondering what you're doing with your Sunday morning, let me tell you what you're doing with your Sunday morning. There is a consolation match. So whoever loses the matches today, they came all the way to San Fran. There's nothing to see here. Golden Gate Bridge, get over it, right? It's time to play a consolation match Sunday morning, and so whoever loses this will have a chance to increase their prize fund and take a little national pride home with them. Sunday morning, there will be a consolation match, regardless of the result here, between the 4 teams playing on Saturday. So, FYI.
Yeah, and even more important, the money for a lot of these players. We saw when we interviewed them before the event, the Ljubljana Turtles in particular, they were stressing how they play chess, they've known each other for a long time, and they want to be known, right? It's not just a thing about vanity. It's, we want to make chess more popular in our native Slovenia. We want to see it thrive, and maybe businesses will take notice and maybe sponsor some chess players. So this is a big moment for a lot of these players. they were thrilled to be here. They had
Yep.
they got stuck in Paris,
Yep.
right? Their flight, they had a connection. They didn't make it. They were
Yep.
stuck 6 hours.
Yep.
They flew to Los Angeles instead of directly to San Francisco.
Yep.
Then had to take a connecting flight from LA to San Francisco, and now they're here. Their backs are up against the wall, quite literally, because they're on that side of the stage now.
Yep.
But they are, they're struggling. It's a very strong team has the biggest time difference, right?
Yep.
The Chengdu Pandas have overcome jet lag and have put their pedal to the metal. They're just, they're doing work right now. There's
Yep.
no other way around it.
Well, there we see Mate Shebenik, board 3 for the Ljubljana Turtles, facing off against Yu Zhongyu. And it's going to take every board for them to get this thing figured out. And speaking of every board, knowing that board 1 matters, but so does board 4. And on that note, the first game of the final round between the Pandas and the Turtles is officially underway. Lucas Guala facing off against what seems to be a team-prepared opening in the Petrov. For the first time, we are not going to be seeing the Borashek opening of knight c3 double pawns. We have a more traditional main line here of the Petrov, also known as the Russian defense, for those of you who keep track from the motherland. And here we have another Petrov. Robert, enlighten us with what's going on here. Tell me, just so I can feel it in my bones, tell me I can take on f7 here. Tell me I can take on f7, Robert.
It's actually very tempting
Why not?
to do so, right?
Why not? Hey, you got to go for the win. Oh, go big or go home.
You know,
Knight takes f7. That would have been the bees. Let's analyze it.
Wishful thinking from you, Danny.
Okay, knight takes.
Yes.
Take. This is like the Cochrane Gambit. You give a little check, do a
So
little dance, make a little love.
Yeah, this looks
Get
actually.
down tonight.
You're just scaring everybody away here.
What's going on here?
Well, first you have to calculate. You have to take on f7 with.
What
with
are
the
you
king.
What are you saying? You take on f7
I'm saying, can you go queen to e7, for example?
or
Is
queen
that
h4? You'd like something like that, wouldn't you?
I'm just wondering, right? You go knight e5, I take your knight e5.
Then I can't take your rook because you have silly checks. Silly rabbit. Checks are for kids.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I don't know the theory here, but it looks like you're able to go queen e7 and get out of this.
Okay.
It does. I agree with you, though. It looks very suspicious from Black's point of view, playing a move like knight d7 so early. But yeah,
It seems suspicious, but apparently it wasn't.
But
Or
what's interesting is that Chu Ruotong is playing instantaneously, or I say instantly, and
including
Lucas
with knight to d7.
Yeah,
So
it's like-
likely Black is doing fine. They're the theory. That's why I'm not playing in the Pro Chess League finals. Okay.
Yep.
So
That's one reason.
you don't have to rub it in. I self-deprecate enough.
That is true.
Throw some compliments my way.
And there is Lucas Skuala, who looks a bit defeated already. Probably just tired because it's been a long day. They've
Yeah.
played 3 games already. And for those of you at home, I mean, chess is probably the most intensive, mental sport for if they call
By
it
far.
sport, a game.
By far.
It's very difficult because you're not only doing a very difficult endeavor, but you're also facing someone who's very, very good at that
Yep.
game. So it's fighting back. And here, Lucas Skuala with the white pieces. I mean, he needs a win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He needs a win because there's no way Wang Yu is losing with the white pieces.
Yep.
Right? I think we feel set on that. And the second game is underway, by the way, between Zhu Xiongyu and Mate Shebenik. So the board 3 matchup is also getting started, but here between Skuala and Ruotong, it looks like Chu Ruotong is now sitting and thinking. So spending a minute on this move here. So knight d2 comes unexpected to her. I believe she can just take on d2 and play a move like bishop d6 and just be close to equal. Maybe there's some problems where the white queen activates first, right? White moves first. And so in a kind of symmetrical position where players are playing copycat, then the move of queen to h5 in some variations is pretty good. So for example, knight takes d2 here, bishop takes d2, and if bishop d6, like I said, you're playing copycat chess. Unfortunately, after castles for white, Black can't really castle back because queen h5 comes, hitting both h7 with checkmate and d5 as a pawn under threat.
Sometimes all it takes is an old-fashioned double attack.
Exactly.
Yep.
Or just
Okay.
an old-fashioned.
An old-fashioned.
Yes.
Don't get me started.
So we have the game between Mate Shebenik and Xu Songyu underway. So we have it's called a Neo Grunfeld. It's pretty typical where if White decides to capture, and if and when White decides to capture on d5 with the pawn, Black follows suit with the pawn on d5, will eventually play knight c6 to challenge the knight on e5. So, yeah, it's a pretty stable position. This has been played many, many times. And White has a slight edge in most of these variations, though Black generally finds a good way to neutralize because the center is very well defended. You may be a little bit passive in certain variations, but after eventual pawn takes d5, c takes d5 back, again, you can go e6 to defend the center. You can play knight c6 right away, and he plays bishop e6. The point being is I didn't want to get the bishop trapped behind the pawns, but instead weirdly placed it in front of the e-pawn. And weird because it's atypical, not because it's bad.
Right.
Exactly. Bishop takes d5.
Yeah. And we've seen this structure a lot, actually, today. The two in the center from a Catalan-style d4 opening, even if this isn't exactly the same thing. So, well, we'll see if Mate Šebenik can find a way to do what his teammates have been unable to do, which is take down board 3 from the Pandas, who is currently sitting at 2.5 out of 3 on all of his games today. Okay, you already mentioned that we could have the symmetrical line happening in the game between Xu Rutong and Luca Scuola, but not exactly the double bishop symmetry, but we are going to get something very similar to it. One of the things that's tricky about these positions is because the structure is completely symmetrical and both sides are really almost fighting for the same things because there's only one open file and there's only a few real open squares to go with it until somebody does something else to try to create some new avenues in the center, is where you put your pieces here can really matter. You really don't want to put your pieces on the more passive squares than your opponent if you're both fighting for the same things. I expect White to play bishop g5, active square, try to get castled, and sometimes this bishop will actually relocate itself eventually to g3 in the hopes that if it can force that bishop away from d6, the e5 square becomes an available outpost. But all things being considered here, this is basically a boring Petrov.
Yeah, queen e7 check here, for example, is just a decent-looking move for Black, right? Just give a king a little check and force White to figure the rest out.
The game that just started has actually moved quite fast and almost further along than the others. That, of course, between the board 2s from each respective team, Nihua versus Yuri Borishek. We've seen this opening, too, at some point today.
Yeah.
And not exactly this line with the queens coming off the board so early, but again, a 4-on-4, 2-on-2, not a lot going on dynamically as far as imbalances. Both sides just trying to get developed right now.
Yeah, we have seen this before. The Queen's Gambit accepted, a favorite of Fabiano Caruana, challenger of the World Championship title in November. And, well, the idea is simple, as I noted earlier. You're getting some space and some quick play for Black, and noticeably on the Queen side.
Yep.
But White can meet that with an eventual A4, and you say, well, Black's pawns may be a bit overextended, and here it is, A4. So Nihua not listening to me because he's got noise-canceling headphones on,
That's
but
right.
he knows the plans better than I do, in fact. So here he goes.
Don't sell yourself too short. You know a lot of good plans. Executing them, that's
the hard part. And here we have Yuri Borishek on the screen here, and he, he's had a bit of a rough day. He's played quite decently, I would say. I mean, they lost.
Yeah, it's always hard when you feel that you played better than your final result, right?
Yep, and Nakamura pointed his game out in the first round of the match where it was 1.5, 1.5, and he blundered and lost that game.
That's a critical turning point.
That was very
critical. And you never want to say the writing is on the wall at that time because, you look forward to a closer match. But the truth is, when everything we talked about before this match, Robert, in regards to momentum, in regards to how critical it is, the 2-3 matchups, well, what happened, right? Board 2 of the Turtles was beating board 3 of the Pandas, and good endgame technique might indeed take home a completely different score. And, okay, if it's just that one game, then it's 5.5, 6.5, but that's still a big difference.
Huge difference.
Huge difference.
And Wang Yue, if he had the black piece in that game, he was
wins.
Getting a full point.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
no
that's
question.
and that's something that these guys know. We're not rubbing salt in their wounds. You're not trying to beat them over the head with it, but because for all the fans here who were with the Turtles all season long, sometimes a match comes down to that and it shows you that you're a lot closer than you think you might be to a championship. But Yuri Borishek's inability to convert on that game is probably going to haunt him in regards to the Turtles not being able to move on to the championship tomorrow.
Yep. And he's going to try his best to. Well, he needs to get a full point. Everyone essentially needs to play for a full point. You can't play just for equality. You're going to have to go for more. And with the black pieces against Nihua here, it's just, I mean, there aren't that many pieces on the board. I think black is doing absolutely fine. But, again, the lack of pieces doesn't give me much confidence in his ability to win this.
Yep. Speaking of needing confidence to win something, that's a lot of what Luka Lenic is going to need to beat Wang Yue. Here we have a almost looks like a Grunfeld structure, but then you realize there was no Phi and Keto over here on the king side. And but as far as white having a center and a two-pawn advantage there in the middle of the board, black has the same 2-on-1 on the edge of the board. And what we have here is just a basic dynamic. Black is going to try to develop, and if he had his way, he'd be getting as much pressure as he can quickly to the d-pawn. But white is totally comfortable here because the lead in development is clear, because control of the center. This is an imbalance, at least, different than the Petrov game. The structure's not totally symmetrical, but here Wang Yue is doing what he does most of the time when he plays chess, which is to get an advantage with the white pieces.
Well, I feel like I'm watching the candidates tournament all over again because this was a very popular opening.
Yep.
There, Vladimir Krumnik played it with black, Wesley So played it with black, and the point is that black's bishop on b7 is sniping the white center on e4. But it is very well defended by the rooks, the d1 and e1. And eventually, white can choose to play the move d4 to d5 to create a pass pawn and gain more space. And we see Luka Lenic here on camera. He's not scared of anyone. He beat Magnus Carlsen earlier in the Pro Chess League season in the Super Saturday, so he's beaten the best player in the world. Why
Yep.
should he fear Wang Yue? Well, I would fear Wang Yue because technically he is just so sound.
He also just looks so scary. Look at that avatar.
I'm not scared of his looks. I'm scared of his play because seriously, the guy is so technically sound and gifted.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen many of his games over the years, and it's honestly, everyone should study his games. His technique is just phenomenal. And
Yeah.
he used to be one of the top 15 players in the world. He was there. He was one of the first Chinese players to get
really reach that level.
to
Yep.
reach the
Yep.
elite level of chess. And he's regressed a little bit in recent years, but he's still proving game after game that he can beat anybody put in his path.
Yep. No, absolutely. And obviously a lot of people think of Ding Li Ren, you think of Yu Yangyi. When you think of some of the top Chinese players right now, you think of Ho Yifan, of course. But Wang Yue was one of the first Chinese players as China invested and committed themselves to chess as part of their culture to really reach the world's elite. So don't forget that name, even though it may not be the first one that you think of the moment you think of elite Chinese chess players. So, all right, well, several of the games are moving along. We still have complete symmetry here in the game between Lucas Guala and Shu Ruotong. Not exactly complete symmetry, but we're not going to hold that against me. The second game that got started, of course, Mate Shebenik and Shu Zhangyu. This is, what's interesting, this is actually the opening that got Zhu Zhongyu in trouble as white, almost similar. That game against Borashek with the bishop on g4 hitting the rook on d1. It's not exactly the same, but the structure is the same.
Yeah.
Here with the opposite color pieces.
Yeah, and in that game, eventually he got stuck with a bad bishop, but the bishops have been traded.
Yep.
And well, for the time being, you see that white has more space with the pawn on d5, has more pawn space and restricting some of the black's pieces. The bishop on g7 is great though. Mm-hmm. It stares down the knight at c3 and through it to the pawn on b2. And so here, from white's perspective, well, how do you make progress, right? Do you play a move like bishop g5, which is, in some many ways, a one-move threat attacking the pawn on e7? Does it actually do anything useful? And the queen on a6 is annoyingly powerful.
Yeah.
Because it defends the knight on c4. Eventually, it can try to infiltrate in the light squares. And don't count out the idea of pawn to f5 for black.
Yep.
I wouldn't do that right away because there's going to be some problem that the a2 to g8 diagonal and
Yep.
moves like knight to g5.
Yeah.
But that's definitely an option to break open the
And
white center.
especially because you can't get rid of the queen, right? It's actually surprisingly safe on a6, along with being annoyingly powerful, much like my 6-year-old. So I can relate to that. Yeah, annoyingly powerful. I like that description.
Well, I hope she's not watching this to hear her dad. describe this.
Hazel, if you are, shout out from Daddy. But yeah, annoyingly powerful. It's not a I don't know, maybe not a bad description. Depends on your view. Here we go. What do we got? We got Wang Yue. We got the one between Nihua and Yuri Borashek is moving along quickly since it started.
Yeah, I thought you were going to throw out a runaway Ure joke. But
Runaway train, never Ure back.
oh, boy.
Yep.
Oh, boy, look what I started
Look
there.
what you just did.
Well, the knight on e5 is kind of more powerful in theory than in practice. It's
Yep.
on a nice central square, an advanced square, but it doesn't attack anything. And so the rook to b8 is saying, well, now you can't go bishop d2, which the move you need to finally fully develop, because bishop d2, then bishop takes e2 check, king takes e2, and you lose this pawn on b2 at the end of that. So,
Yes, sir.
Borishek is creating a bit of, not traps, but he's creating some difficulties for his opponent. And what do you do as white? Because your bishop is stuck there for now. Maybe a move like rook a2, just play sort of passively and
But it's
calmly.
honestly not the worst move anyway, right? Because, yes, it defends the b2 pawn, and you hate it from just a purely passive perspective. But black's biggest weakness is the a6 pawn, right? So this sort of indirectly prepares the idea that you're in a position to double and gain up against it. So kind of maybe an inadvertently multi-purpose move, rook a2?
Yeah, and you can also even just take on b5 as another option and then
Yeah.
just figure out the rest later. I mean, there's not many pieces on the
You
board.
can't just figure out the rest later,
You can
Robert.
figure out the rest later. Because, look, bishop takes b5. How are you going to take back on
I'll
b5?
take with the rook.
Okay.
Go ahead. Now I'm threatening bishop takes e3.
I see what you're threatening.
You are. I want you to control yourself right
So,
now.
Knight d7.
Okay, knight d7. You're trading into a worse endgame, but I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm gonna. Okay, I can't blunder. I was tricking you.
And
Um,
not much going on here.
yeah.
Just rook a2, bishop d2 next, and
Okay.
you can always sort of trade pieces off. Yeah, it's just there's not nothing. There's not enough left.
There's never not nothing.
Okay, rook a, yeah, rook a2,
Here I come.
and bishop d2, and bishop c3.
Yeah.
move.
No checks are good, huh?
Also,
Okay.
yeah, it's just
Yeah. No, there's not not that black would be really in trouble here anyway. But yeah, there's just not a lot going on here, and unfortunately for Yuri Borishek, anxious to get a win here for his Turtles, probably going to be settling on a draw. And unfortunately, Nihua agreed with Robert. We hate when that happens, and played bishop takes b5. So we will keep our eye on that. Back over to the game that we started things off with between the board fours, Luca versus Xu. Xu Rutong, Luca Skuala.
some progress for white here because
Yeah.
black would love to counter on the e-file, but moving the bishop actually is very bad. So a move like bishop to f8
Yep.
allows rook takes e8.
Followed by bishop takes f6.
Exactly, just destroy the pawn structure on
Yep.
the king side.
Double pawns.
And h6 doesn't help because you can just go bishop to h4.
Yep, and
And
you're not really in a position to
Oh,
want to
boy.
play g5, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want you to do it.
Yeah, I know
don't-
you want me to do it. I just, was making clear that it would not be the ideal approach for black here, everybody. The bishop comes back to g3, and that pawn will very soon wish it could return, regardless of...
Not the end of the world, though.
It's not the end of the world, but I think that there's enough pieces on the board to find a way to pry open black's king. The e5 square also being so open. But okay, it's interesting, and because, as we said, Xu Rutong, like when we, to make a comparison to the game versus Borishek, where she played c5 as a lash-out move. I mean, if she really is feeling the pressure here and unable to unwind, she may go for a plan of h6 and g5. One of the things we got to highlight here that's interesting is, despite us liking some of the progress white has made, the clock progress has been made by Xu Rutong, who's been under the worst time pressure of anybody. Here, she's really trying to fix that weakness, almost, doubling up her opponent on the clock.
Yep, and I just want to send us over to Mate Shebenik's game because it got very interesting. And Luca Skuala will need to keep this one going. And, he may be spending a lot of time, but in some ways that's good.
Yep.
When you're down 3 games, you want to keep games going as long as possible to give your
Yep.
team hope.
Yep.
And if we go over to the game between Shebenik and Xu Songyu, we see that this move d6 just happened. Making
Yeah.
use of the fact that the pawn on e7 is pinned. If you take on d6 with the pawn, you lose your rook. If you take with a knight on d6, which seems most natural, there are knight d5 ideas.
Yeah, I was going to say, fork here. Let's get that fork emote going. That's that would be too many forks, not enough spoons
Wow,
there
so
for
this
black.
happened, and then knight takes e4 is live in the game.
Wow.
So this is a
So
critical
this
moment
is
here.
Okay, and he immediately plays knight c7, queen c6, and takes c8. White has an advantage here, right? Up the exchange, you would think.
2 pawns for the exchange. I
The
mean,
problem is not just the 2 pawns, though. It's, again, the queen, annoyingly powerful. She's gone full 6-year-old.
yeah, it's the very strong queen.
Yeah, so actually, despite the initial tactical excitement we got from the move
But
d6 and
I
knight
didn't
d5,
understand. He went knight c7 there. I thought he was going to take the pawn e7 or something like that, but maybe it just didn't pan out as well as like knight takes e7 check.
instead.
Yeah. Well, no, you can't do that. This loses all the material on the board. But in a king h8, don't have queen takes f7?
Maybe. I mean, don't yell at me, okay?
So I just
Yeah, I agree. So why was knight to c7 played so instantly? Why was knight takes c7 dismissible?
I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't.
Yeah, no, you're right. And knight takes e7 might have been played or dismissed too quickly at the excitement of, okay, sometimes when you're down and out, again, this is an example of emotion affecting your evaluation, is you're excited that there's some play. Just the fact that there's an imbalance is going to make you excited for some winning chances. So you sort of commit to the first one you planned on, which maybe was this fork. But in hindsight, the fact that he played that so quickly maybe comes back to bite him, because
king f8 after knight takes c7 check, but that also
then you can move even just move the knight back.
Yeah,
right. And this is like, are you going to
Just
take here? And like, I feel like I'm going to mate you somehow.
you probably will.
Right. I mean, I agree. We're going to go back to the game here as several moves have been played since that exchange
Okay,
sacrifice.
queen d5 is a
White gets the ladies off the
But
board.
Look at it, b2's hanging out too. I mean, this is just bad. Very bad.
Something either was miscalculated from the start of d6, or we're missing something about knight takes e7 in a rare, shocking moment. I'm going to say that me and Robert might be right about this one. So that's a surprise one there, but it's tough, right? We know the Turtles are down and out psychologically, but unfortunately that means sometimes you miss your other chances, right?
Yep, and Chengdu is the beneficiary of all these things here, and in particular, this player, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Chengdu, most of these games...
No, Zhang Yu has... He's got the luck working for him. Look at, what is it? Did
There's
he
a draw
bring
between
a lucky charm or something?
Borishek and Nihua, but yeah, Zhang Yu has just been...
Yep.
I mean,
and
in
if
charge.
you're a Pandas fan, you're excited that they have at least secured a playoff tiebreak with a score of 8. It will take a clean sweep in the remaining 3 games. That means we are moments away from the Pandas securing their chance for the $20,000 first purse prize in the Sunday Pro Chess League Championship. So, but okay, you're right, and it is hard to watch when you feel like people or a team is sort of beating themselves. But you have to give the Pandas credit for always staying in there. Speaking of credit, it feels like Xu Rutong has also needs to be given defensive credit. She kind of seems to have liquidated the pressure here. I don't see any immediate tactics for White.
I don't either. So knight d7, she played and just took on e7, and
you want there to be something like this and then check everybody and winning the bishop, but this king will happily come forward, and White doesn't have any sort of follow-up. So
nado.
No, nado, nada, not a lot, naga, not going to attack here anymore. The shout out to everybody who's with us here. This is the first semifinals of the Pro Chess League Final Four. After this, St. Louis will be taking on the Armenia Eagles. Shout out to John Bartholomew streaming in the chat. He will be hosting a special Pro Chess League viewers only tournament right after the second semifinal today. So if you're trying to clear your evening schedule, make sure that you make it available. John Bartholomew will be hosted right after we're done with this. Chess streamer extraordinaire. Shout out to John and everybody on both chat rooms.
Yeah, and John is he's a player in the league. I say fan of the league. He played in the league.
He played for the Blizzard. They just barely lost to St. Louis.
Yeah.
He was a game away, or a few games away, from being here in the final with his Blizzard. So and I know that John was kind of heartbroken about that. Sent me some late night texts. It's awkward. I won't get into it.
Well, as this one is coming to a conclusion, 8-5, so only needs a half more point. Luka Lenic with the black pieces, I think he's been fending off Wang Yue very well thus far. He has created a dynamic game, imbalance.
Yep.
There's an isolated pawn e6, but it's actually a very strong pawn.
Yep.
And what White would love to do is eventually play the move e5 and then somehow get the queen onto g6 and try to go for some sort of checkmate.
Batteries are fun.
But it just doesn't seem like you're coordinated enough to do that, because black can just go queen f7, and then the knight f3 is also going to be under threat. So,
but you've underestimated Wang Yue before.
That's true, I have.
In today's games.
I have. But just because he's done well doesn't mean that his position is always good. I'm not going to let you stare at me.
I'm going to stare you down.
But look at this position.
It's palpable.
Look at this position.
Yep.
What is White's move here?
I don't know. Give me a second to look at the position. Okay, Queen C7's a move that I like.
Go for it.
I like. It's a candidate move. I didn't commit to it, but okay, now I like
So
it.
Rook F8.
Yep, Rook F8. You can play it. You're threatening a move like Rook takes F3 because that would remove the defender of my Rook on E1. I'm just letting you know that I see your threat, Robert.
I'm proud of you.
And I raise you. Do I raise you Rook to D1? Maybe.
Okay.
Call me
Perhaps.
maybe, but don't call me Shirley. You can't take with the knight. I'll take here. If you take with the bishop on E4.
Yes.
That looks good, actually, for you. It looks good for you, so we'll see. I mean, yeah, no, I think that the position is pretty close to unclear, though. I mean, I don't think that white is any worse here either.
And there's Luka Lenich as we see him there. He looks like he's ready for a battle at all times.
Yeah, he's always ready.
And I'm looking around his teammates. I mean, Mate Shebenik is just down 2 pawns and should be going down fairly shortly. You can't survive a position like this just down 2 babies.
2 babies. Not so many of those babies turning into girls. So yeah, no, there's no pawns for white to get a new queen, and black has too many after he takes the 8 pawn. It's time to push him, baby, and they're gonna come.
You're making Yasser proud with
That's
your pushing
right,
baby.
That's right. You say "oh boy" a lot. Maybe when they make our mixtape, it'll be your voice saying "oh boy."
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Here comes that mixtape.
And looks like Luca Squala only has 37 seconds left. So that winning attempt may be thwarted by his own clock management.
Yep.
And okay.
Well, at this point, she's defended really well. I mean, she
Extremely
took
well.
care of the pressure, so you got to give her full credit because, remember, a few moves ago we were talking about the symmetry, everybody, talking about white having the more active pieces, which might lead to some pressure. Okay, but she makes the right moves at the right time. You back up the bishop to E7 to unpin the knight. Sometimes I think to provide some instruction here, I think sometimes amateur players or beginner players have a really hard time, Robert, playing or understanding a move like bishop E7, right? Where you're voluntarily retreating a piece to a less active square, but the point is it's more important for your overall position that this knight is unpinned and that you can defend the potential threats. And you have to be willing to think big picture there and not be obsessed with, well, my piece is on its most active square here. So this is just a nice move, clean defensive effort here. She offers a trade, gets rid of white's pressure. Now she's playing with confidence and security given her team's position in the match. So she does have that working for her, whereas Luka really needed something more. Makes me surprised he went for this variation of the Petrov or Russian defense, honestly, when he kind of needed a win.
Yeah.
Because there's just not a lot of life here. I mean, Borashek's line with the double pawns on the C file. You think this has been a team effort by China to play the Petrov? I mean,
Yeah, Chengdu.
you know, the team that prepares together plays well together, and that's what they're doing.
And the Petrov is a staple of Wang Yue's repertoire. It's been for many years.
It makes sense.
Yeah, he's very. It makes sense for him because he's such a technical player.
Right.
And so he plays this, maybe gets a slight disadvantage and works his way out of it.
Yep.
And so these players do work together.
Yep.
Right there, Li Chao.
Well, we know the Chinese chess culture is very supportive of one another. I mean, they work together, they prepare together, and it's all working hard for the greater good. And we see it paying off here because these guys are playing a repertoire that almost feels like it's directly from Wang Yue's. Look at that little fiddle diddle. What's he fiddling there?
Did he give him a pawn?
Can somebody get these guys some fidget spinners or what?
Yeah, because your chess players love to twirl pawns.
That's right. I'm a pawn twirler.
Yeah, you are for sure. And look at him. He's twirling. What is that?
It's a pawn. It's
But look how concentrated he is. Look at how quickly his eyes are darting.
Oh no, it's the Chess.com wristband from the goodie bag they got.
Oh, look at him.
All the players got their goodie bags, and he's using it as a nervous toy.
He doesn't have anything to be nervous about considering he's playing well right now.
Yep.
But what I was going to say is they do actually study together. When I was interviewing playing the Chengdu players, I was just talking with them casually. They were telling me, giving shout-outs to Li Chao, who could not make this event, but has played with them throughout the season. In fact, Li Chao was overperforming his already very high rating throughout the year.
Yep.
And he went 13.5 out of 16, which is phenomenal.
Yep.
And they also don't have Yu Yangyi, who went 32.5 out of 44. So
he played every match almost.
He played all except for maybe 2 matches, I
Right.
think. And he was just, he was a force all season.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know who the who's who list is of top Chinese chess players, you could find those rankings somewhere online. I encourage you to do so because those are some of the biggest names in Chinese chess to tell you how seriously they take the Pro Chess League and how hard Li Chao worked as a player manager. We have a few north of 2,700 player managers in the league, and we love those guys. And Li Chao, the Panda players know. We sent him home an extra jersey. He wasn't here, but we made him a jersey to take home because we know he's going to wear that proudly.
Yep. And look at that tactic by Mate Shebek just is losing to. I mean, look at his knights.
Oh, my
Zhu
gosh.
Zhengyu,
It's just like, have mercy.
yeah.
This is just abusive.
I mean, that
Look
is
at it.
beautiful.
G4 is played, allowing rook takes d3 followed by e4 check, everybody. Get those fork emojis out. Open up your purse. We know you always keep your favorite fork on hand in case a meal comes along. Get those forks out. That is one fork after another, and if king takes e4, the point, everybody, is knight takes f2. Runs into knight d3, and black wins a king and pawn ending with 2 extra peshka.
Yeah,
So,
speaking of
there you go.
forks, I said pawns. If anyone can, I would love some food. I'm pretty hungry.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty hungry, too.
But no, on a serious note, with that win, he moves to 3.5 out
That's
of
right.
4 in the day.
And
so
with that win, we are officially congratulated. Let's let the crowd, let's let them hear it, everybody. They've officially clinched their chances to move on to the championship. Congratulations to the Pandas. And they will be playing in Sunday afternoon's match after a very, very clean performance at this point.
And there's Lucas Squala on screen with Chess.com's very own J.D. Cannon in the background.
J.D. Cannon.
He's got the headphone on, too.
He doesn't
so he can't
hear
hear
us.
But we do see Lucas Squala there concentrated. And, well, right now he is down a pawn in his game against Chu Ruotong.
Yep.
And so it looks like the end is near for him as well as the team. And this is an important game for Chu Ruotong. I really believe that.
No, I
because-
think just for the future of the Pandas winning the championship, getting some confidence, if she's able to get a victory here against Luca. No, I agree with you.
She looks so calm.
She is. Has she blinked at all while she's played today? Okay, there we go. That's good. Just healthy, safety first. That's all.
No, she's very concentrated. A little head shake by her. So maybe something just. Well, here we see Lucas Squala. Both of them are young competitors who will just continue to get better and outperform their ratings a lot this season. Here we pull up Luka Lenich's game against Wang Yue, and well, that's a great battle. For kind of diehard chess fans.
Diehard chess guys. Yeah, Luka Lenich is Darhai, Rawhide. Never say never with a vengeance, Bruce Willis.
If you do a quick pawn count, do a little Peshka count.
Yeah, a little Peshka count. I'm all about it. It's Peshki, if they're plural, by the way. But yeah, so we got 5 for Luka and only 4 for Wang Yue.
And a draw by agreement between Lucas Squala and
Right.
Chu Ruotong. So, okay.
So neither one of the board fours puts up a donut.
Right.
So that's good. We're not going to have a goose egg for either. The truth is this was a very well-played game overall. Chu Ruotong was under some pressure to start. She defended, right?
Yep.
And then, if anything, was in the driver's seat toward the end, and in the end they come away with what seems like good chess karma, poetic justice, a peaceful result.
We did focus a lot before the event started on the board fours, and we said that some of them, not some of them, all of them are overperforming their rating throughout the season. It's interesting that in this match, both board fours scored half out of 4.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't up to them. They didn't decide this match at all. It's came down to the play of Wang Yue going.
Right.
Well, he's 3-0 and still playing this one, and the play in particular of Chu Seong-yu, who is 3.5 out of 4. A fantastic day for him, as Nihua rounded out with 2.5 out of 4. So the board 4 in particular, Chu Ruotong tomorrow. She needs to get her rest, clear her head, maybe take in some of the sights, and come back ready to play tomorrow. And
well, we flashed right there, as you said, 3.5 out of 4 for the player who really started things off in a really tough spot for the Pandas, right? Again, those of you who may just be joining us, thank you for being here. In one of the first critical games of the show, Zhu Zhengyu was really down and out against Yuri Borashek, but he found a way to come back and win that game and went on to a 3.5 out of 4 day, leading his teammates. So, again, congratulations to the Pandas, regardless of what happens in this final remaining game. They will be in the Pro Chess League Championship tomorrow. And that will be the afternoon matchup. There will be a consolation matchup as well for the Turtles, so they should not be feeling too disheartened yet, or at least find themselves at some point for tomorrow's matchup where they can really really go for it one last time here in San Francisco. But okay, Luka Lenich, he beat Magnus Carlsen at some point in the Pro Chess League during one of our special kind of all-star Super Saturday events. And he's better. He's better here as black against Wang Yue. But defense wins championships, and something tells me that Wang Yue is going to hold on in this game.
And the reason he will hold on if he does is that the fact that the light squares on the black king side are a bit vulnerable. So if he can get his knight over to g6, let's say, there's some counterplay. However, I mean, black's just much better. The knight on c5 is a phenomenal piece, protecting the e6 pawn. Eventually it can even get a little bit more active and further
Maybe
down the
help
board.
these 2-on-1 over here.
And precisely, there's a 2-on-1 majority on the queen side for Luka Lenich here. So, I mean, I don't even know what white should do here. Rook e3 maybe, just I can't find moves. Because the queen on f4 is really bothersome because it means that my back rank always has to be watched unless I get mated back there. So queen c2 is a good start, I guess. Rook d8 can be played. The question becomes, is trading rooks helpful for black's winning chances or white's drawing chances?
Right.
And it's a tough question. I need to look at the position a little more, but my first instinct tells me that trading the rooks might help white because you lose a defender. Right, if there are checks on the back rank, there is a rook now that defends it. But if you trade the rooks, then there might be some difficulties back there.
Yeah, but you're right. We're gonna see how hard Luka pushes in this position to show some good endgame technique. He is probably the only one who can win, short of some sort of epic blunder that gets that black king that you said was maybe going to be in danger on the light squares and lots of trouble. But I guess I'm going with the prediction that Wang Yue will be able to hold, based mainly on the fact that it's hard for black right now, if everything stays the way it is, to make a lot of progress without making things worse. If you move if you try to use your 2-on-1, this knight becomes vulnerable, which is really kind of key to holding protection of the e6 pawn. If this queen just kind of sits tight, here she goes to c4, I agree. e6 is weak, so it's an extra pawn for black, but hard for me to imagine a concrete approach that improves black's position without maybe makes it a little worse. But that's why they get paid the big bucks to figure that out. So we'll see if black can find a way to do that, to make some progress with the extra pawn without allowing too much counterplay.
Right, you don't want to make progress. Well, you do want to make progress, but you can't start pushing those pawns until the queens are traded, because the queen on the c file always tickles that knight on c5, makes you kind of stops you in your tracks. And this rook d1 check, of course, is a good idea. And now make queen to d5. The idea being that you're offering a queen exchange. If the queen doesn't take, you have queen d6 as a possibility. And queen b1, going to h1.
Yeah.
That should have been our first instinct. But is it really?
I don't know that that's the thing. It doesn't
really do anything.
It's almost risky too in some ways, because if you get fully pot committed over there in the corner and this king is totally safe on g3, there may be some issues that happen over here. I mean, okay, that's a little extreme to imagine that. But, okay, he plays knight e5. That's a nice move, everybody, because it guards the g6 square. One possible threat was a move like rook h1, king g3, queen g6 for black. But now that's not on the table. So we're still in that position where we're kind of saying, all right, black is up a pawn, better, but where's the beef, right? How do we do something here without making things worse?
Yeah, that's a great question, because, again, you can't really move on the queen side because your knight needs protection of the c5 square. And this idea of the rook h1, the king on g3, it's actually surprisingly safe. How do you get to that king? You play queen f5 to g5. Okay, that's one check. I can still either move my king to f3 or put my queen to block on g4. So
if it wasn't for a move like queen g6, there's also this weird idea of knight d7 coming at some
distract
point, right?
Knight d3, your idea.
Or knight d3. In fact, even better, because that works without the idea of queen g6. So rook e1 played by Luka. That's a nice idea. I think simplifying the rooks here makes a lot of sense for black, right? Get the rooks off the board. That'll actually probably make it harder to make this king safe from checks by the queen, and maybe make it a little bit easier for black to start using his extra pawn advantage without there being some sort of risk of counterplay.
Although rook takes e1, queen takes e1, queen f4, I'm a little bit concerned about black's king safety. So the queen's coming to f7. I can always go f4 after my queen goes f7 with check to protect it. Make king h7 is a nice starting move. And the reason why is that I'm now threatening to make a move like queen e4, offering a queen trade, and you can't go queen f7.
You can't go queen f7 because queen c3 wins the knight.
Well, queen takes e5.
I was kidding. Yep, just take the knight straight up. So, all right, well, queen c3 check was played. Oh no, sorry. We have rookie 1 was played and nothing has happened on the board just yet. But wowzers, what we have here is a pretty impressive performance. We'll have a second to take a breath here and think about it. Do a quick recap for everybody as we get you set for the next semifinal going down between the St. Louis Archbishops and the Armenia Eagles. But just a great performance right now from the Pandas. Luka Lenich doing his best for pride of the Turtles, for pride of the pack, trying to put up some sort of resistance against the great Wang Yue of China. And we'll see if he can find a way to win this endgame up a pawn.
And I do see Chess Bra in the stream here on the Twitch chat. So I got to give a shout out to Chess Bra. I don't know if it's Eric or one of them.
Probably Eric.
Probably
Usually
Eric.
that's him. Yep.
So Eric Hansen, Grandmaster, played for the Montreal Chess Bras
Yep.
League and did great commentary of the Candace Chess Tournament. So give a shout out to you, Eric, and your bra. So Queen D4. Okay. So first instinct is, what about Knight E4 check? And okay, King H7 first, but Knight E4 check was definitely possible there.
Yeah, I didn't. I was nervous there would be some sort of weird mating net, but he decides there's nothing. Luka Lenich doesn't go for Knight E4. The king moves.
Try to take on F2, but maybe you just go Knight.
Get dirty.
Knight G6 or something, or Queen check first. Yeah, it's not. There's no mate.
Where's
for
the?
black.
Yeah, there's no mate, but there's also. Is there a mate for white on the other side?
Mate perpetual ideas. That's the problem. You don't want to give too many checks.
Right.
You know, 1 check's okay, 2 checks maybe, but sometimes they don't stop.
3 checks is a charm as far as draws go, and yeah, you're right. That's his idea. Okay, but here comes Wang Yue, like just making things tricky, and before we know it, both sides are under 30 seconds. So a photo finish we might have. Thank you, Master Yoda.
Well, go to the queen on F5 there. It's both a great attacking and defensive piece, hitting the pawn H5. And that's the problem, is H5 was used, trying to be used to play Knight G6 and gain a nice safe spot for the knight. But now queen takes H5 is a free pawn. And look at the knight in C5. It covers the E4 and D3 check
perfectly.
squares.
Wow, well,
Knight E4 check. He resigned.
He resigned before he could do it.
It's mate. It's not only check,
it's
mate.
actually mate. Queen D6 blundered Knight E4 checkmate in 1 move, and at the very least it proves that Wang Yue is human.
Yes.
Also that sometimes I freak out when people drop forks on the board.
Yeah, wow.
Because that, got me a little bit.
You know, the good news about that is there's a game that didn't matter, and it's nice to get losing out of the way.
Right.
Because let's say he plays tomorrow against whichever opponent they face, and
right.
he happens to lose the second game.
Right.
He already has that taste of defeat in his mouth, and this may just...
it's not going to psychologically rattle him too much. But at the same time, it's a nice win for the Turtles, a good win for Luka, who's gotten some scalps against some of the strongest players in the league. He played a great game as black, and he proved me wrong when I said Wang Yue would defend the draw. So, unlike you, I love being proved wrong.
Prove right?
It doesn't matter, because I love being proved wrong.
Okay,
That's the difference between us. But we won't go anywhere else. I'm purposely doing that. Ljubljana Turtles.
Okay.
Ljubljana.
Yeah. You okay there?
They fought super hard to get here. They have had a phenomenal season, and as underdogs, constantly surprising all of us, providing chess commentary. They deserve nothing but our appreciation for entertaining us and for having just brought such good chess to the table. And one of their heroes throughout the whole season, of course, as we know, has been Luka Skuala, who is joined right now by women's FIDE master Alexandra Botez.
Thanks, Robert and Danny. Lucas, you guys may have not won this match, but you had an incredible season. You upset a lot of strong teams. How did it feel to just make it to the Final Four?
Actually, we were very surprised to come this far. We were very lucky in knockout games, and yes, very surprised actually.
Can we be expecting another comeback from the Ljubljana Turtles next year?
We probably will play, if they invite me, of course.
What are you going to do the rest of the tournament? Do you guys have any fun plans to explore San Francisco?
We will go to see the match in basketball between Golden State and Pelicans, and we will get tickets.
Well, what's more exciting to watch, chess or basketball?
Probably basketball.
Okay. Do you have any last words to say to all of the fans who have supported you guys the entire event?
Of course, I will thank you very much for everything, for our support from Slovenia and all over the world.
Thank you. We're also going to talk with Ni Hua. Yeah. Nihua, your team just won. Congratulations. How are you feeling for tomorrow? Who are you scared to play? The Armenian Eagles or St. Louis?
I think both teams are also all very strong, and St. Louis is a local team. I think they must be have a good rest. And Armenia team, we play many times with them, and we know them each other very much. So I think both team is not easy for us.
How is your team going to spend preparing or resting?
Yeah, I think today we are lucky. Today is not raining. I think we will go to see the city tonight.
We saw a lot of Petrov team. Did you guys prepare these lines together?
Actually, not really. Just we played Petrov.
Okay, thank you. Back to you guys.
Well, that was firstly, I'm very happy they're going to a Golden State Warriors game.
Right.
Because I was here a couple months ago and I went to a game and it was a phenomenal experience.
Right.
And I got to support a fellow basketball fan.
Oracle Arena is quite the
amazing.
spectacle.
It's
One of
amazing.
Yeah, super intense and a lot of fun. And also, Luka needs to remember that they have, regardless of how late the night is and how much fun they have a consolation match tomorrow against whoever falls short in the afternoon match that'll be coming up shortly. But to quickly recap and again tell everybody not to go anywhere, the next round will be starting. I actually don't even know exactly when the next round's starting, but it's not going to be too long. So don't go anywhere. Any final words on what we saw here from the Chengdu Pandas and Ljubljana Turtles?
Well, I first want to give a shout out to the Turtles, and they thanked all their fans from Slovenia and around the world because they've been a great team. They've been friends for a long time, and they've been one of the most dedicated teams in the entire Pro Chess League from the very start when the league was birthed. You know, they've been a big fan, a big supporter, and I just want to give them a shout out. But the Chengdu Pandas proved their might. And throughout the season, before day one even started, I said the Chengdu Pandas were the team to beat in the Pro Chess League. I just like their roster from top to bottom. And here they have Chu Ruotong, who I think got that good half point. It's better not to lose that game. And I think she should have confidence. She may have lost the 3 Grandmasters today, but she's an incredibly talented player in her own right. And with Wang Yue just dominating on board 1 until the game, it didn't matter, even though give credit to Luka Lenic. And then Xu Xiongyu, who's been a defensive wizard.
Yeah.
You know, he struggled at the beginning. He turned things up, and he's went 3.5 out of 4. So with Nihua being solid, sandwiched between those two, I think it's a great showing by Chengdu, and they're, I think, the team to beat.
Yeah. Right now, St. Louis and Armenia have their work cut out for themselves against each other, but certainly Chengdu sent a message today as far as who is favored and who is the team to beat heading into the finals with that performance. And on that note, we are going to thank all of you for being here for the first half of the day. Say that the stream is not ending. We are going to take a very, very quick break before we come back, provide you with a little bit of recap analysis of the last match and some preview of what is ahead between St. Louis and Armenia. So please don't go anywhere.
Well, we're back here, and I'm joined by International Master Anna Rudolph. Anna, thank you so much for joining me here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to kick out Danny and be next to you, Robert and Hess. I hope to be called Anna and Rudolph. That would mean the world to me. So I'm hoping for Alexandra listening to this.
Well, sometimes dreams do come true, and they did for the Chengdu Pandas, who defeated the Ljubljana Turtles 9.5, 6.5. What did you make of that first match?
It was so impressive. I didn't know what was going on until round 3 because I thought that, yes, the Chengdu Pandas came in very strong. Number 1 team performed so well during the regular season and the playoffs. But the Turtles, they are fighters. I thought that they might make a comeback in round 3. Did not happen.
Yeah, and you know the Turtles players better than a lot of people do because they've grown up together. They've been friends for a very long time, and you've known some of these players for a long time as well. Did you think that their team chemistry would make up for their rating deficit coming into the match?
Exactly. I thought that knowing that they are such good friends, they grew up together. I think they have been friends for 20 years. That's what Luka Lenic told me, and I met them as a teenager. So I have seen them growing up together, getting into the national team of Slovenia together. And now they are here in the Pro Chess League final, so I was deep inside, I was rooting for them so much.
Well, one player in particular suffered a tough fate in this match. That was Yuri Borishek. And I'm going to bring up two of his games here, unfortunately, for him. He played very, very well. I was deeply impressed by his play. And this position here, when he was playing the third board for the Chengdu Pandas in Chu Songyu, he had a great position with the black pieces. And then with one move, he played his move rook to e4 here. And after that, I mean, he blundered. This is a great tactic. Bishop takes e4, knight takes e4 check. And it looked like he would take this rook on d2. And after taking the rook on d2, he would swing back and win this pawn on d5. But unfortunately, he missed it after king to g2. He can't take this rook. You know, he wanted to take the rook. That was his whole plan. But after knight takes d2, here comes pawn to d6. And after pawn d6, there's no stopping the queen. So, you know, you've been in this situation before. You played a lot of tough games. How does this mistake happen?
I think it's a moment where you think that you are catching the opponent, but then suddenly it haunts you that you miscalculated just one move. It's half a move. It's just so that the knight is not coming back in time. I'm pretty sure that he calculated the line that after taking on d2, he will have to get back with the knight. Yeah, and unfortunately for him, he's chasing a pawn that's not catchable because there's no way to get this very important d8 square under control. So he did lose this one. He also lost another one. And unfortunately for him, he was playing Wang Yue, the #1 player for Chengdu Pandas. And here it looks pretty equal, right? Opposite colored bishops. Both sides don't look they have much going for them. But unfortunately for him, his piece placement wasn't excellent, especially the rook on e4. And the game itself was a bit complicated. But as the king just came over to a5, he ended up losing that pawn in the game. So to me, I don't know about you if you agree with this, Anna. I thought that Wang Yue was just phenomenal. His technical skills were on full display here, and he got a full point from a position that I assume would have been a draw. So how do you, no matter who wins, and I'm going to ask you in a second who you think is going to win between Armenia and St. Louis, how do you think that his play today will push him forward into the finals tomorrow? It's very impressive, and I think it should give him an even bigger confidence. Of course, he is the highest rated player among all the players of the finals, so he clearly is the best player. 2,700, that's huge in chess. 2,700 as a rating. But he clearly proved that even though this is a new atmosphere, new environment, none of these players have ever been to a place like this. Also for us, this is so new. So we love it. We love it. Esports, chess, first ever chess esports event, but the players had to get used to it. They're sitting in front of the computer, even though their opponent is also in front of them, but it's a computer screen, it's a mouse. So I was curious, like, how do these classical grandmasters will adapt to the new environment of the gaming venue that we are hosting here?
And I think you can answer that question better than I can. I was up here sitting in the commentator's booth. You were downstairs. So can you tell all the fans at home, like, what was it like? What were the players feeling? I mean, you spoke to them individually. You were posting on social media. What was it like for you as a fan, a commentator? What was it like down there?
I think before the first round, they were very nervous, most of them. I could see on their faces and I could feel in the air that they were not so comfortable with the situation. But after the round started, I think they were like just at home because these players are used to playing online. They play on Chess.com. They have competed in the Pro Chess League, not only this year, but most teams were also participants last year. So they are very used to playing online. What's new here is that there's a live audience looking at them. They are wearing headphones, listening to either white noise or classical music. And the whole atmosphere is just so amazing. So I think the first round was the adapting to the new situation, new atmosphere. But from that moment on, I think the players were very comfortable and they enjoyed it. The players I talked to, they were very happy about being here.
Well, we have a new set of players about to join us here, Armenia versus St. Louis. Before we end this little highlight preview show, I have to ask you. I told you I was going to. And you're on camera and we'll have to make a prediction here. What do you see happening in this matchup between Armenia and St. Louis?
Oh my, that is so tough. First of all, let me include a very important piece of information. The players get to the playing venue usually by taking an Uber. The Armenia Eagles were helped by Varakobian from St. Louis to get an Uber because you need a credit card to make the petition valid. You need to get the application and then you need to introduce your credit card. So basically, Varakobian from the St. Louis Archbishops have made the Eagles arrive to the round.
Okay, well, so
Shout out to both teams.
I see you not answering my question, and
I'm
also
trying everything.
you're creating a conspiracy
I'm
theory.
trying my best.
Because if St. Louis were to lose this matchup, I see you're trying to say, oh, maybe he was with the Armenians the whole time. No.
Not
But
saying that. But they are very good friends.
Of
the
course,
two teams get
of
on
course.
very well.
And in
That
general,
was the
chess
point.
players, because it's such an international game, people know each other from all across the globe. And with that, I would say that, in my eyes, the Armenia Eagles are the slight favorites. And the reason why is because of our buddy Artek Manukyan on board 4. He spoiled us.
Excuse me. Yes, this is what I wanted to say. If you guys follow us on social media, well,
Yeah.
if you haven't followed us yet, then I don't know what you're doing. Can you please follow us right
Yep.
now? We posted about the gifts.
We all did.
got a cognac, famous Armenian cognac with our face on the bottle.
Yep.
We got a T-shirt, Armenia Eagles T-shirt with our names on it.
Yes.
We got a mug. Robert has got a mug that says he's Alpha Zero.
Yeah, we all make mistakes, and he made one there. But, it was a great gift from him.
It was great. And now Robert is rooting for the Armenia Eagles.
No,
Do you
that's
see the
not what I
connection?
said.
Do
I
you
didn't
see the
say
connection?
there's no bribery. I'm not rooting for them, but I
I'm
think
not sure about
as an
that.
objective commentator that with their lineup of 3 grandmasters at the top led by Zavin Andreasyan, he's been really a formidable force all season long. They're missing Melkumyan, who's really held down the fort on the top board. But with him on board 1, Samvel Tursahakian on board 2, and Karen Gregorian on board 3, and rounded out by Artak Manukyan, who's performed 200 points above his rating all season. And there's Forrest Chen. That's the person we have to talk about for St. Louis.
Yeah.
He is underrated, totally underrated. And he's did beat 2 grandmasters in Minnesota. He beat Grandmaster Shabala for Pittsburgh in the opening round of the playoffs. So he's a force to be reckoned with as well. And, of course, their 3-headed monster at the top, Varujan Akobian, Dariusz Svirch, and Yaroslav Zherbuk, who's been close to MVP status for the entire league. I think it'll be a good match. But like I said, board 4. It's all about the board 4s here
It's all
in
about
San
board
Francisco.
4 and all about our new friend Artak, you're saying.
And speaking of new friends, I'm going to make friends with the food, so I'm going to bid
You're
everyone
leaving
adieu.
me.
No, you will be joined by Danny Rensch. So, I want to say thank you for everyone for watching. I'm out of here. I'm getting some food, but it'll be the Danny and Anna show, and I hope you have a great round.
Thank you so much. See you very shortly.
Yes.